Chapter 1172. Not good. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. His heart trembled violently. He wanted to dodge the golden light, but it was too fast. Yi Xian couldn't dodge in time. Swoosh! Ah! Gai Tianyuan turned into a golden light and shot into Yi Xian's forehead. Yi Xian fell from the sky. He clutched his head and screamed in pain. Possession! You want to take over my body? Yi Xian roared. He felt as if his head was going to explode. An extremely terrifying will was crushing his saint soul. Ah! Yi Xian rolled on the ground in pain. Terrifying veins squirmed on his forehead. It was proof of the terrible pain Yi Xian was suffering. Gai Tianyuan was only left with a wisp of his soul. However, his soul was extremely powerful. It was an immortal realm soul. Now that it had invaded Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, it caused unimaginable damage to him. Die! Die! Gai Tianyuan roared crazily in Yi Xian's body. Not only did he want Yi Xian dead, he also wanted to take over Yi Xian's body to prolong his life. You're the one who's going to die. Nirvana energy! Yi Xian roared. The nirvana energy rushed towards his sea of consciousness. He sat cross-legged in the void. He wanted to use the nirvana energy to kill Gai Tianyuan in one fell swoop. Yi Xian's face kept changing. He instantly turned into Gai Tianyuan's appearance and roared crazily, Yi Xian, even if you kill me with the nirvana energy, your sea of consciousness will be destroyed by the nirvana energy. At that time, you will also become an idiot. I'll take your life. Yi Xian's face returned to normal. He let out a sinister roar. This was a battle of souls. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void, his face alternating between ferocious and sinister. No one knew who would emerge victorious in this battle of souls. The sun rose and the moon set, and the stars moved. After a full 7 days and 7 nights, Yi Xian gradually opened his eyes. His ferocious expression finally returned to normal, and he spat out a mouthful of turbid air. You've been watching for so long. Why haven't you come out yet? Yi Xian said softly. He looked into the distance, but he didn't get any response. Looks like you want me to invite you out. Boom! Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers and the power of space-time was unleashed. The space around them crumbled and a figure was sucked in by Yi Xian. Bang! Yi Xian struck out with his palm, causing the man to spit out a mouthful of blood and fall heavily onto the ground. Yao Yuyi. This person was actually Yao Yuyi who had fled in a hurry. PFFF. Yao Yuyi's mouth was bleeding profusely as he fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. However, he looked at Yi Xian with an indescribable shock. Are you Yi Xian, or Gai Tianyuan? Yao Yuyi asked in fear. Actually, Yao Yuyi didn't flee at all. He was only hiding in the dark to spy on Yi Xian and Gai Tianyuan's battle. He wanted to sit on the mountain and reap the spoils later. And the reason why Yao Yuyi took such a huge risk was because of his greed. One had to know that Yi Xian cultivated 3 supreme powers and had the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. How could Yao Yuyi not be tempted? His idea was simple. He just needed to wait for Yi Xian and Gai Tianyuan to be injured. Then, he would naturally be able to seize the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. However, Yao Yuyi didn't expect that Gai Tianyuan's body would have a problem. A wisp of his remnant soul even wanted to possess Yi Xian's body. This caused the two of them to engage in a soul battle. Yao Yuyi wanted to make a move, but when he sensed Yi Xian's terrifying aura, he suppressed this thought. After all, he was seriously injured and didn't have much combat strength. However, Yi Xian had already woken up and sensed his existence. This made Yao Yuyi extremely shocked. He didn't know if the person standing in front of him was Yi Xian or Gai Tianyuan. Brother Yao is really forgetful. You and I just went through a difficult time together. How can you not recognize me in such a short time? Yi Xian smiled coldly. You are Yi Xian. Then Gai Tianyuan. Looking at Yi Xian's cold expression, Yao Yuyi was extremely sure that the other party was indeed Yi Xian. Didn't this mean that Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul had already been destroyed by Yi Xian? Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't answer Yao Yuyi's question. Instead, he pointed a finger at Yao Yuyi and instantly restrained him in front of him. Then, he took Yao Yuyi and soared into the sky, disappearing from this world. This was a nameless mountain range. In the middle of the mountain, there was a cave that had been opened up. Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged inside. An extremely terrifying holy light circled around his body, and an extremely terrifying aura faintly erupted. Break. Crack. Something seemed to break inside Yi Xian's body. An extremely terrifying aura burst out. He directly broke through to the great sacred ruler realm, and his cultivation became even more terrifying. What a great sky tyrant venerable! I only purified 30% of his vitality and directly stepped into the great sacred ruler realm. Yi Xian exhaled a turbid breath, and a sigh came from his mouth. Humph, what's there to be proud of? You're just a mortal. At most, you can cultivate to the creation and ruin realm. In the end, you're just an ant in the chaotic world. Suddenly, a contemptuous voice sounded in Yi Xian's ears. The owner of this voice was Gai Tianyuan. He was actually still in Yi Xian's body. Old thing, I advise you to not be noisy in my ears. Otherwise, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Xian whispered sinisterly. A wisp of nirvana power circulated in his body, and Gai Tianyuan's extremely miserable cry was heard. Stop! Stop! You bastard, stop right there. I hope you remember this. If you make me unhappy, even if I can't kill you, I can make you live in eternal torment. Yi Xian whispered coldly. I'll remember. Stop. Gai Tianyuan said weakly. If anyone could see the scene in Yi Xian's consciousness right now, they would definitely realize that Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul was dimmed, and was being bound by a wisp of nirvana power. As it turned out, Yi Xian had emerged victorious in that soul battle between the two of them. However, Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul was extremely strong, and even Yi Xian had no way of destroying it. After all, Gai Tianyuan was once at the immortal state. Even if he was only left with a remnant soul, it was not something that Yi Xian could destroy. In the end, Yi Xian had no choice but to use the nirvana power to trap Gai Tianyuan within his consciousness. Even though he could not kill Gai Tianyuan was still being restrained. Of course, it was not that Yi Xian had no way of killing Gai Tianyuan. After all, the nirvana power could destroy anything, including Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul. However, if he did so, Yi Xian's consciousness would be severely damaged as well. That was a price that Yi Xian could not afford to pay. Therefore, Yi Xian could only imprison Gai Tianyuan in his sea of consciousness for the time being. He wouldn't let Gai Tianyuan leave at all. Although this caused Yi Xian to have a knot in his heart, it was the best solution. Chapter 1173. Once he found a way to eliminate Gai Tianyuan, he would naturally take this old man's life. At the same time, Yi Xian did not waste any time. He had devoured Sky Tyrant Venerable's blood soul essence, which allowed him to refine 30% of the purest Yuan Qi, helping him enter the Great Saint King realm. Yi Xian, why don't we make a deal? If you let me go, I can agree to any of your conditions and give you anything you want, Gai Tianyuan said weakly, lowering his status to the extreme. Gai Tianyuan had shot himself in the foot. He originally wanted to die together with Yi Xian, but he did not expect to be imprisoned in Yi Xian's knowledge sea. Now, he could not advance or retreat. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't pay any attention to Gai Tianyuan, and it was even more impossible for him to let his remnant soul out. If this fellow were to find an original body, he'd definitely be the first to kill him. Yi Xian definitely wouldn't give Gai Tianyuan the chance. Inside the cave. Yi Xian ignored Gai Tianyuan's incessant chatter in his knowledge sea and got up to walk into the depths of the cave. At the end of the cave, Yao Yeye was covered in blood and tied to a wooden stake by the space-time chains. He was weakly moaning. Pa! Ugh! A divine whip appeared in Yi Xian's hand. A whip shadow viciously lashed Yao Yeye's body, immediately waking him up from his weak state. A muffled groan came from his mouth. Brother Yao, how does this divine whip taste? Yi Xian held the divine whip in his hand with a cruel grin on his face as he asked Yao Yeye. Yi Xian, I will not tell you the incantation. I advise you to let me go. If the people of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace know that you have imprisoned me, you will definitely die without a burial ground. Yao Yeye's face was filled with hatred as he threatened Yi Xian. Pa pa pa. The divine whip swept across the sky and blood splattered everywhere. Countless whip shadows lashed Yao Yeye's body, causing large amounts of blood to splatter on the ground, causing Yao Yeye to be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. This whip was called the God-beating whip. It was a spirit weapon that could injure the soul. Every lash could cause unimaginable pain. Stop, stop! Yao Yeye painfully screamed. Tsk tisk. Yi Xian curled his lips and said, Brother Yao, as long as you obediently tell me the incantation to open your Qiankuan bag, you won't have to suffer so much pain, don't you think so? Yi Xian's spirit's incantation, to Yi Xian's twos to know the incantations as to twos, he whips his cheese ask him to spirit the 9th spirit child of the 10,000 spirit palace, there must be unimaginable treasures in his Qiankuan bag. Yi Xian naturally would not let him go, so he whipped him day and night, hoping to force out the incantation to open his Qiankuan bag. Yi Xian, it's not that I, Yao Yeye, care about these worldly possessions. I'm just afraid that if I give you the incantation to open my Qiankuan bag, you will take my life in the next moment. Yao Yeye weakly mocked himself. Yao Yeye could be considered to have seen through Yi Xian's character. As long as he had no value to Yi Xian, he would definitely take his life. So even if he was tortured by Yi Xian, Yao Yeye would definitely not tell Yi Xian the incantation because he did not want to die. You really think I don't dare to kill you? Yi Xian sinisterly smiled. Although he was very interested in the treasures in the Qiankuan bag, he still cared about Yao Yeye's cultivation. What do you want to do? Yao Yeye was horrified. An extremely strong feeling of death assaulted him. He was certain that Yi Xian wanted to kill him. There's no point in keeping you alive, so I might as well kill you. Yi Xian sinisterly smiled. A strand of nirvanic energy appeared. It was clear that he would take Yao Yeye's life in the next moment. No, you can't kill me. Brother Yi, spare me, spare me. Yao Yeye spoke in fear. His entire face was pale from fright as he bitterly begged Yi Xian. Yi Xian, spare his life. He will be of great use to you. Suddenly, without waiting for Yi Xian to act, Gai Tianyuan's voice rang out in Yi Xian's mind. This caused Yi Xian to slightly frown. Gai Tianyuan, you can't even save yourself, yet you want to plead for him? Yi Xian sneered. What a joke. Why would I plead for him? I just don't want you to die so quickly. If you die, I'm afraid I won't be able to live either, Gai Tianyuan retorted. What do you mean? Yi Xian was startled. I originally thought you were very smart. I never thought you'd be so foolish. Gai Tianyuan said coldly, don't forget that it was you who schemed against the Myriad Spirit Palace that caused all this. Right now, the entire Myriad Spirit Palace has suffered heavy losses. It will definitely alarm the people of the main palace and they will come to investigate. If this brat dies, you'll become the first suspect. At that time, think about what will happen to you. But if I don't kill him, he'll still tell the truth. At that time, I'll still have to face the wrath of the Myriad Spirit Palace, Yi Xian said darkly. But if you kill him, you'll really have no way out, Gai Tianyuan said grimly. It was not that Gai Tianyuan was thinking for Yi Xian. Instead, he was imprisoned in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. If Yi Xian encountered any life-threatening danger, he would die in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness as well. After all, the nirvana chains that bound his soul fragment were not just for show. They really could bring him unimaginable killing intent. However, what you said does make some sense. Then I'll spare his life for now. Yi Xian's eyes lit up slightly. As if he had thought of something, the killing intent around him dissipated. Yao Yeye could not hear the conversation between Yi Xian and Gai Tianyuan. He only saw that Yi Xian seemed to be deep in thought. When he sensed Yi Xian's killing intent dissipating, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that his life was saved. Thanks to Gai Tianyuan's reminder, Yi Xian thought of a brilliant plan. Covert action, golden cicada shedding its carapace. These simple words explained Yi Xian's thoughts. Now that the myriad spirit sub-hall had suffered heavy losses in the outside world, with all the elders dead and less than a tenth of the disciples left. Furthermore, the ninth spirit son, Yao Yeye, had also disappeared. This would definitely cause a huge uproar. As the saying goes, paper cannot contain fire. This matter would definitely be spread to the outside world by the disciples who were lucky enough to survive. At that time, Yi Xian would also become the target of public criticism. Yi Xian's idea was very simple and also very bold. If he appeared in the outside world with Yao Yeye's appearance and replaced Yao Yeye as the ninth spirit son, all these troubles would be easily resolved. With Yao Yeye's identity, he would also obtain countless benefits, enough to give him ample time to cultivate. After all, Yi Xian had yet to cultivate the primal chaos star master's inheritance and had yet to refine his body. This required time to cultivate. If he appeared in the outside world with Yi Xian's identity, all kinds of troubles would probably find him. Furthermore, to cultivate an avatar, he still lacked 4 primal chaos elemental stones. With Yao Yeye's identity as the ninth spirit son, these things would definitely be easy to collect. However, to transform into Yi Xian was easy in theory, but it was very difficult to actually do it. After all, the transformation technique was just a method to deceive others. As long as one's cultivation was higher than Yi Xian's, they would naturally be able to see through it. This was an unsolvable problem. However, Yi Xian was not worried because he thought of someone who could definitely solve this problem, and that person was Gai Tianyuan. A world-shaking monstrous genius who had once competed with the myriad spirit lord, an unparalleled character who was once in the immortal realm. Gai Tianyuan should be familiar with many lost secret techniques, right? Although Yi Xian had no choice but to imprison Gai Tianyuan in his knowledge sea, if he could squeeze out all of Gai Tianyuan's value, it would only be beneficial to Yi Xian. From this series of events, Yi Xian could see that an old fellow like Gai Tianyuan had many tricks up his sleeve, and this was precisely where he was lacking. Chapter 1174. However, he could not kill Yao Yeye for the time being. Since he wanted to impersonate him, it was necessary to keep him alive. Collect. Yi Xian flipped his hand and a gourd appeared. As Yi Xian opened the gourd, he sucked Yao Yeye inside. Yi Xian, let me out. What are you trying to do? Yao Yeye roared from within the gourd. Although he had survived, he was still trapped in Yi Xian's gourd. He was naturally filled with fear. Seal. Yi Xian casually sealed the gourd, completely isolating Yao Yue's voice. After doing that, Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. Old man, I need you to help me with something, Yi Xian said to Gai Tianyuan in his sea of consciousness with his hands behind his back. Why should I help you? Gai Tianyuan replied coldly in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. Why should I? Yi Xian smiled. However, his smile was slightly sinister, giving off a sinister feeling. Because you're locked in my sea of consciousness. If I die at the hands of the myriad spirit sky palace, the nirvanic power binding you will erupt. At that time, only death awaits you, Yi Xian said coldly. You. Gai Tianyuan said angrily, but in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. What Yi Xian said was the truth. He was currently tied to Yi Xian. If one of them suffered, the other would suffer as well. Gai Tianyuan, actually, there isn't much enmity between us. After all, I was the one who saved you from the Tianyuan kingdom. As for the Chaos Star Master's legacy, that was also the reward you promised me. I can promise you that as long as you behave yourself, I will return your freedom when I reach the Immortal Realm, Yi Xian said confidently. As the saying went, give a sweet date after a slap. This was the most basic method of controlling people. Gai Tianyuan already hated Yi Xian to the core, so Yi Xian could only threaten and bribe him. He had to give Gai Tianyuan hope. People were afraid of despair. Gai Tianyuan was no exception. Being trapped in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness for eternity and having to worry about Yi Xian finding a way to kill him, how could Gai Tianyuan not treat Yi Xian as a great enemy? Now that Yi Xian had made a promise, it was also to give Gai Tianyuan a reassurance pill to appease him. Gai Tianyuan was, but it still gave him a sliver of hope. Yi Xian's words, Yi was that B. Tell me. What do you want me to help you with? Gai Tianyuan asked. I need a transformation technique that can fool everyone. Yi Xian went straight to the point. A transformation technique that can fool everyone? Gai Tianyuan was taken aback. Then, he instantly understood Yi Xian's plan. You want to transform into Yao Yue? Aren't you a little too bold? Gai Tianyuan blurted out in shock. He continued, do you know that the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace is not as simple as you think? There are countless terrifying characters inside. If you reveal even the slightest flaw, you will face certain death. Life and death are fated. Riches and honor are up to the heavens. There are too many dangers along the way to become the strongest of all time. Compared to the benefits, these trifling dangers are worth the risk, Yi Xian said coldly. Strongest of all time. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Gai Tianyuan murmured in a daze. Then, he laughed out loud, Yi Xian, I really didn't expect your ambition to be so great. You want to become the strongest of all time? Don't you think you are a joke? Joke? Yi Xian muttered coldly. Then, he narrowed his eyes, you will know in the future whether I, Yi Xian, am a joke. Now, cut the crap. Do you have a transformation technique or not? I do have a transformation technique. It is called the Heavenly Cicada Transformation. It is an extremely profound transformation technique. Apart from the strongest of all time and a few people with great abilities, no one can see through your true form. Gai Tianyuan replied in a deep voice. This technique can't fool the strongest of all time. Yi Xian frowned. After all, he had pretended to be the ninth spirit son, Yao Yue. Sooner or later, he would have to deal with people from the myriad spirit sky palace. If he met the legendary Lord of all spirits, wouldn't his identity be exposed at a glance? Not to mention the Lord of all spirits, if those so-called great beings discovered his identity, he would be in great danger as well. Don't be hasty. I haven't finished speaking. Gai Tianyuan said coldly. The Heavenly Cicada Transformation originates from the Nine Heavens Cicada clan. They are a clan of the chaotic universe. They are extremely few in number, but each of them is terrifyingly powerful. As long as you can find a profound cicada bead and merge it into your body, even the Lord of all spirits won't be able to see through your true form. Profound cicada bead? Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He asked, where can I get it? The profound cicada bead is the inner core of the Nine Heavens Cicada. Where do you think I can get it? Gai Tianyuan sneered. Gai Tianyuan, you dare to trick me? Yi Xian's face turned cold as the power of nirvanic extermination erupted. Clearly, he wanted to give Gai Tianyuan a taste of his own medicine. Stop. I have the profound cicada bead. Gai Tianyuan panicked. Clearly, he was extremely wary of the power of nirvanic extermination. Humph, Yi Xian snorted coldly. It seemed that he couldn't be too polite to this old bastard Gai Tianyuan. Otherwise, it would really fuel his arrogance. However, I placed the profound cicada bead in the Grand Central Territory. You can only get it when you go there, Gai Tianyuan quickly said. The Grand Central Territory? Yi Xian nodded slightly. Even if the profound cicada bead wasn't in the Grand Central Territory, he would have to go there sooner or later. After all, the Grand Central Territory was his stage. That was where he would rise to prominence. However, before he went to the Grand Central Territory, he still needed to be fully prepared. Only then could he go there with a peace of mind. Firstly, since he wanted to impersonate Yao Yueya, he needed to reach the 9 Heavens Saint King level. Secondly, he needed to cultivate the inheritance of a chaotic star master. Only then would he have another life-saving method. Thirdly, he needed to gather the chaotic 5 elemental bead and cultivate an avatar before he went to the Grand Central Territory. However, before that, he needed to cultivate the heavenly cicada transformation successfully and appear in the Grand Southern Territory as Yao Yueya. After all, Yao Yueya had been missing for too long and would definitely attract the attention of the 10,000 Spirit Palace. The next step was very simple. Gai Tianyuan didn't waste any time and passed the heavenly cicada transformation's incantation to Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't delay and quickly cultivated it. 10 years later, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Yi Xian's appearance and figure gradually changed. After a few dozen breaths, he had turned into Yao Yueya. Did I succeed? Yi Xian muttered. He directly created a mirror image to look at his own appearance. Indeed, he found that he had turned into Yao Yueya. Even his aura was exactly the same. Chapter 1175. The Heavenly Cicada Transformation is a great transformation technique and a peerless secret technique of the 9 Heavens Cicada clan. There are very few people in this world who can see through this technique. If you can merge with the black cicada bead, then even the strongest experts of all time won't be able to see through your true form. However, I have to remind you of 2 things. The Heavenly Cicada Transformation is not omnipotent. If you meet the 9 Heavens Cicada clan, they will definitely see through your identity because the Heavenly Cicada Transformation is a transformation technique created by the 9 Heavens Cicada clan. Secondly, although you have transformed into Yao Yu and even imitated his aura, you do not possess the Yao Yu battle body, nor have you cultivated his cultivation technique. If you were to use your full strength, you would definitely reveal your own aura. That would definitely arouse the suspicions of others. You must pay attention to this matter, Gai Tianyuan explained. Thank you for the advice. Yi Xian nodded. However, you can rest assured that the 9 Heavens Cicada clan is very rare. Even when I roamed the Grand Central Territory, I only met one person and that person was personally killed by me. Now that you are in the Grand Southern Territory, no one will be able to see through your true form. Gai Tianyuan said. Gai Tianyuan then told Yi Xian a few things to pay attention to and let Yi Xian memorize them one by one. One had to admit that Gai Tianyuan was indeed very powerful. His mastery of methods and knowledge was an eye-opener for Yi Xian. Gai Tianyuan was like an encyclopedia. This was a great help to Yi Xian, and this was exactly what Yi Xian lacked. Let's go, it is time to leave. I'm afraid the outside world is already in chaos. Yi Xian said in a deep voice and disappeared from the cave with one step. The Grand Southern Territory was in an uproar. Chaos, it was all chaos. More than half of the myriad spirit palace was destroyed. Venerable Sky Tyrant died tragically and all the elders were killed. Only a few disciples managed to survive this battle. The news of Gai Tianyuan's appearance, Venerable of Sky Tyrant and Yao Yuyi joining forces to fight him, and Yi Xian's participation, quickly spread throughout the Great Southern Dou region. Fortunately, the foundation of the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall was extremely deep, and there was definitely more than one venerable sky tyrant. The two supreme elders returned to the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall and finally calmed down the turmoil. The two grand supreme elders were both in the creation realm and were the true foundation of the All Spirits Palace. However, the first thing the two of them did when they returned to the Myriad Spirits Palace was to search for the ninth spirit son, Yao Yueya. If Venerable Sky Tyrant died, then so be it. However, ninth spirit son was different. He was the target of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace's cultivation. They could not afford any accidents. Otherwise, they would not be able to bear the wrath of the main palace. However, after searching for ninth spirit son for 10 years, they could not find any clues. Yi Xian also became their target of suspicion. They even personally went to Butian Pavilion to ask for him. Naturally, Butian Pavilion Master could not hand him over. Fortunately, Butian Pavilion Master had Butian's sect behind him. The two supreme elders did not dare to go too far. When they found out that Butian Pavilion Master did not know where Yi Xian was, they could only return to the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall. However, it was also at this time that Yao Yueya reappeared in the world and returned to the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall. When this news spread out, the entire Great Southern Dou region gradually calmed down. However, with Yao Yueya's return, another piece of news spread out. It made Butian Pavilion Master angry and helpless. He did not know how to explain it to Sect Master Butian. The content of this news was very simple. It was also spread by Yao Yueya. Yi Xian's wild ambition led Gai Tianyuan to the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall. Yao Yueya led Venerable Sky Tyrant and tens of thousands of disciples to kill Gai Tianyuan and Yi Xian. Venerable Sky Tyrant fell in this battle and the entire Myriad Spirit Palace Hall suffered heavy losses. Yao Yueya was also heavily injured and only returned to the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall after recovering from his injuries. When Butian Pavilion Master found out about Yi Xian's death, his entire mind was restless. He naturally knew that Yi Xian wanted to borrow someone else's knife to kill him because he was at the scene at the time. Now that Yi Xian died at Yao Yueya's hands, Butian Pavilion Master felt that this was only natural. However, he did not know how to explain it to Sect Master Butian. This was because Sect Master Butian asked him to protect Yi Xian's life. Now that Yi Xian was killed by the Myriad Spirit Palace Hall, how could he explain this to Sect Master Butian? Inside Butian Pavilion. Butian Pavilion Master paced back and forth. The aura around his body was extremely chaotic. He did not know whether or not he should tell Sect Master Butian this news. What should come will come in the end. Old Sect Master should be able to understand my difficulties. Butian Pavilion Master let out a sigh. Then, he struck an ancient mirror in front of him with a spiritual art. Wang! Smoke rolled on the surface of the mirror. After a dozen or so breaths of time, a blurry figure appeared in the mirror. It was clearly Sect Master Butian. What's the matter? Sect Master Butian asked indifferently. He had told Butian Pavilion Master not to contact him unless there was something important. After all, he was currently focusing all of his energy on Lu Bai. Sect Master, Yi Xian is dead. Bang! Butian Pavilion Master kneeled down and kowtowed. His entire body was trembling. He did not know how Sect Master Butian would deal with him. What? Dead? Sect Master Butian said in shock. Even through the ancient mirror, Butian Pavilion Master could feel the old Sect Master's extremely gloomy aura on the other side. How could this be? How could this be? How could he die? You deserve to die to the extreme. Sect Master Butian was furious. A terrifying ray of light appeared on the surface of the mirror, as if it wanted to cross through the layers of obstacles and kill Butian Pavilion Master. Sect Master, please spare my life. Please listen to this disciple's explanation. This disciple is truly powerless. Butian Pavilion Master said while trembling. Speak, what exactly happened? Sect Master Butian roared in anger. It's like this. Butian Pavilion Master did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly explained everything. On the other side, Sect Master Butian gradually became silent. When Butian Pavilion Master finished speaking, a light sigh also came out from the mirror. This matter is indeed not your fault. This Yi Xian is simply lawless. He only has himself to blame for dying at the hands of the 10,000 Spirits Palace. Sect Master Butian murmured hatefully. Butian Pavilion Master did not care about Yi Xian's life or death, but he had promised Lu Bai that he would protect Yi Xian's life. Right now, the thing that gave him a headache was how to face Lu Bai. This was the reason why he was so angry and restless. This disciple is wrong. Please punish me. Butian Pavilion Master kowtowed again and again. This matter has nothing to do with you. You can leave. Sect Master Butian let out a heavy sigh. His indistinct figure disappeared from the mirror. This also made Butian Pavilion Master let out a sigh of relief. The heavy stone in his heart had finally been lifted. On the other side. Central Region, Heaven Mending Sect. Sect Master Butian's brows were tightly locked. Even the aura around his body was extremely fluctuating. He did not know whether he should tell this news to Lu Bai or not. He was deeply afraid that Lu Bai would just leave. Hide it from him for now. Sect Master Butian muttered in a low voice. No, paper cannot wrap fire. He will know about this matter sooner or later. If I wait until he is strong enough to tell him, he will hate my heaven-mending sect. At that time, my heaven-mending sect will be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. It seems like this is the only way. Sect Master Butian was a peerless figure. He was definitely not a wishy-washy person. Instead, he had the courage to make a decision. He had already decided to tell Lu Bai about this matter. After all, Lu Bai was extremely intelligent. Even if he wanted to hide this matter, it would not last long. Rumble. The gate of heaven opened wide. Wearing a snow-white robe, strands of divine light of creation shot out from the gate of heaven. An extremely powerful aura gushed towards sect leader Butian like an ocean. He broke into the creation realm. Sect Master Butian was shocked awake. Lu Bai's cultivation speed had left him dumbstruck. Bai greets Sect Master. Lu Bai slowly walked out from the heavenly gate. Strands of divine light of creation surrounded his body. There was still a faint smile on his face, giving others a feeling of calmness. Chapter 1176. Good, good, good. Sect Master Butian couldn't hide his excitement. He looked at Lu Bai as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. Sect Master, do you have any news about Brother Yi? Lu Bai asked with a smile. This. Sect Master Butian's expression slightly changed. This caused Lu Bai's smile to fade away. His eyebrows twitched as a bad feeling rose in his heart. Did something happen to Brother Yi? Lu Bai asked with a deep voice. Bai, listen to me. Yi Xian, he. Sect Master Butian didn't know what to say, but the more he acted like this, the more Lu Bai felt that something very serious must have happened to Yi Xian. What happened? Lu Bai hurriedly asked. He's dead. Sect Master Butian sighed and finally told him about Yi Xian's death. Boom. Lu Bai froze on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning and his heart was in turmoil. He staggered backward, and his soul seemed to have frozen. No, can you? After 10 breaths of time, Lu Bai angrily roared. His entire being had gone insane. He didn't dare to believe this terrible news. No, Brother Yi definitely wouldn't die. He was going to become the strongest existence in history, how could he die so easily? Lu Bai roared like a madman. His eyes were as red as blood, as if he was about to go mad. Listen to this old man slowly. Yi Xian was too daring. He can't blame anyone for his death. Sect Master Bu Tian slowly told the story of Yi Xian. Time passed bit by bit. As Sect Master Bu Tian told him the whole story, Lu Bai became extremely gloomy. He clenched his fists so hard that his fingernails dug into his palms. Blood flowed out, but he didn't even realize it. Veins popped on his forehead, making him look extremely ferocious. Myriad Spirit Palace. The ninth spirit sun. Lu Bai's robe fluttered as he roared. His eyes were as red as blood. The creation divine light around him exploded in all directions, proving the extent of his grief and anger. Why? Why didn't you save him? Didn't you promise me that you would protect his life? How could he have been killed by someone from the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace? Suddenly, Lu Bai roared madly at sect leader Bu Tian. Strands of viciousness grew around him as he glared at sect leader Bu Tian furiously. Calm down, calm down. Although sect master Bu Tian had expected Lu Bai to be very agitated after hearing the news of Yi Xian's death, he didn't expect Lu Bai to be like this. Lu Bai was already showing signs of cultivation deviation. Tell me, why didn't you save him? Aren't you the immortal king of the immortal realm? Didn't you say that your Butian sect is an ancient sect in the chaotic world? Lu Bai roared angrily at sect master Butian. It's not that my disciple didn't want to save him, but he was powerless under those circumstances. My disciple warned Yi Xian again and again not to provoke the 10,000 spirit celestial palace, but he didn't listen at all. That's why he was killed by the 10,000 spirit palace, sect master Bu Tian said helplessly. 10,000 spirit celestial palace. 10,000 spirit celestial palace. Lu Bai roared angrily. The divine light of creation shattered the heavens and the earth. He walked madly towards the outside. The shocking killing intent that filled the air was extremely frightening. What are you doing? Sect Master Bu Tian's expression changed drastically. He immediately blocked Lu Bai's path. To avenge Brother Yi. Lu Bai roared madly. A bone-chilling killing intent whistled through the heavens and the earth. Clearly, he had entered a half-crazed state. At this moment, he only wanted to avenge Yi Xian. Fool! Sect Master Bu Tian scolded angrily, are you crazy? How can you avenge him with your current cultivation? I'm afraid you'll die at the hands of the 10,000 spirit celestial palace as soon as you step foot on it. I'm going to kill them. Lu Bai roared angrily. He did not listen to sect master Bu Tian's advice at all. At this moment, his heart was filled with hatred. He only wanted to kill everyone in the 10,000 spirit celestial palace to avenge Yi Xian. Sect Master Bu Tian became very anxious when he saw that Lu Bai was about to enter a crazed state. After all, there was no such thing as qi deviation in the chaotic spirit body. However, Lu Bai was clearly about to enter a crazed state right now. This was enough to show how much damage he had suffered. Lu Bai, listen to me. If you go avenge Yi Xian right now, the only one who will die will be you. If Yi Xian knows about this in the underworld, he definitely won't let you do this. If you really want to avenge him, you need to become stronger as quickly as possible. Only when you become the strongest in history can you destroy the 10,000 spirit celestial palace, Sect Master Bu Tian quickly said. The strongest in history. Avenge Brother Yi. Lu Bai murmured blankly. His fists were tightly clenched. A drop of tear streaked across his cheek before slowly falling to the ground. I understand now. Lu Bai took in a deep breath before slowly exhaling. His entire being gradually calmed down. However, if one were to observe carefully, they would discover that Lu Bai's body was emitting an imperceptible evil aura. This evil aura was extremely well hidden, but it still made one's heart palpitate with fear. Seeing that Lu Bai had finally calmed down, Sect Master Bu Tian let out a sigh of relief. He was truly afraid that Lu Bai would kill the 10,000 spirit celestial palace on impulse. At that time, even he would not be able to save him. The 10,000 spirit celestial palace was too terrifying. Not to mention the Lord of 10,000 spirit celestial palace, even those old monsters who had not appeared for many years were not people he could deal with. I want you to promise me one thing. Lu Bai looked at Sect Master Butian expressionlessly. As long as you can cultivate in peace, let alone one thing, I can promise you 100 things, Sect Master Butian quickly said. All right. Lu Bai slowly nodded. He looked straight at Sect Master Butian and said, I want to travel through the central region and compete with these so-called spiritual children and divine children. No. Just as Lu Bai finished speaking, Sect Master Butian's expression changed greatly. He did not even need to think before directly rejecting Lu Bai's condition. You have a chaotic spirit body. If your identity is known by the outside world, you will be hunted down by the various great sections. A chaotic spirit body that has not matured will still face the danger of dying. This old man can promise you anything, but this is the only thing I cannot promise you. Sect Master Butian roared with a trembling voice. He definitely could not agree to Lu Bai's condition because there were too many unimaginable dangers involved. He could not afford to take such a risk. If you do not agree, then Bai can only bid farewell to Sect Master. Lu Bai's expression did not change as he bowed towards Sect Master Butian. You. Sect Master Butian's face turned red, but in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. He knew that he could not persuade Lu Bai. Fine, fine, fine. Sect Master Butian sighed helplessly. In the end, he compromised to Lu Bai. I can promise you that you can travel through the central region, but you must hide the fact that you have a chaotic spirit body. Chapter 1177. I will teach you a transformation technique. This technique was created by the Nine Heavens Mystic Cicada clan and is called the Heavenly Cicada Transformation. As long as you don't meet the Nine Heavens Mystic Cicada clan or some powerful experts, no one will know that you are a chaos spirit body. Unfortunately, my old friend was killed by Gai Tianyuan and his Mystic Cicada Pearl was also taken away. If you can find the Mystic Cicada Pearl, no one will be able to see through your chaos spirit body. However, it doesn't matter if you don't have the Mystic Cicada Pearl. With the Heaven Mending Technique and the Heavenly Cicada Transformation, no one will be able to see through your true form unless the strongest expert of all time comes. Thank you, Sect Master. Lu Bai bowed, but a trace of viciousness flashed through his eyes. This was because he wanted to walk through the central region and kill the spirit sons of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace one by one. This was only to get some interest for Yi Xian. Until he became the strongest of all times, he would definitely personally annihilate the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace and even kill the so-called Lord of all spirits. 10,000 spirit palace, 10,000 spirit palace. Yi Xian sat on the palace master's seat with two supreme elders beside him. They were respectfully reporting something to Yi Xian. Of course, at this moment, Yi Xian's appearance had completely transformed into Yao Yuye's. These two life and death stage great elders were naturally unable to see through his true body. Spiritual Son, the Chaos 5 Elements bead is a supreme treasure. It will be very difficult to collect all of it. Reverend Daoguang frowned. Spiritual Son, if you want the Chaos 5 Elements bead, you can report it to the main palace. There must be a lot of them in the main palace. As for the southern domain, Reverend Scarlet Heaven wanted to say something but stopped. Clearly, Yi Xian's order was a little difficult for him. Bang! Bastard! Yi Xian slammed the table and stood up. In order to exterminate Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul, this spirit son suffered heavy injuries and now needs the primal chaos 5 elements bead to heal his injuries. Right now, I am training in the Great Southern Do region. If I were to seek help from the main hall for everything, wouldn't I be laughed at for being incompetent by the other spirit sons? Spiritual Son, please calm down. We were wrong. The two supreme elders hurriedly bowed and apologized, knowing that they had angered the ninth spiritual son. This spirit doesn't care what method you use. It doesn't matter if you snatch it or steal it. Even if you search the entire southern Do region for me, I want to see the primal 5 elements bead placed in front of me within 3 years. Spiritual son. The two supreme elders hurriedly agreed, not daring to disobey at all. From this, it could be seen how much of a deterrent the 12 spiritual sons of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace were to these people. What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you leaving yet? Yi Xian coldly berated. Spiritual son, please calm down. We will take our leave. The two supreme elders didn't dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly bowed and left. Yi Xian was the only one left in the entire 10,000 spirit palace. Yi Xian, how do you feel about the identity of the ninth spiritual son? Gai Tianyuan's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian smiled and said, the power of the ninth spiritual son is great. Even the creation realm cultivators have to be in fear. It seems that I made a good move by changing into Yao Yue's appearance. Yi Xian, don't be complacent. This is the great southern Do region, and there are very few people who know Yao Yue. Moreover, according to what you said before, Yao Yue is usually gentle and refined, and never gets angry easily. He's a scheming person, and if you act too self-centered and meet someone familiar with him, you'll be exposed sooner or later. Gai Tianyuan warned. Don't worry. I know what I am doing. Yi Xian smiled coldly. But I am curious. What do you want the chaotic 5 elements bead for? Do you want to cultivate an outer body incarnation? Gai Tianyuan asked tentatively. Gai Tianyuan knew very well that Yi Xian had obtained the outer body incarnation technique he left in the holy land of Taichu. If he wanted to cultivate an outer body incarnation, he needed the chaotic 5 elements bead. Yi Xian had nothing to hide after hearing Gai Tianyuan's words. Yes, I do want to cultivate an outer body incarnation. This is a great magic, so it is naturally very attractive to me. Yi Xian said. Yi Xian, I advise you to give up on this matter. You should know that this magic is very widespread, and those who can cultivate it are few and far between. This is because it is full of life-threatening dangers. Back then, even I didn't dare to cultivate this magic, Gai Tianyuan warned in a cold voice. He didn't care about Yi Xian, but if Yi Xian died while cultivating an outer body incarnation, then he would die with Yi Xian. This was not an outcome he wanted to see. You are you, and I am you. You'd better not compare me to you because you are just a failure. You have no right to tell me how to cultivate, Yi Xian said coldly. You. Gai Tianyuan said angrily because Yi Xian's words were an insult to him, but he didn't know how to refute. Don't you. A failure is a failure. You are just a stepping stone for the Lord of all spirits. If I were like you, I would end up like you in the end. Yi Xian sneered. Fine, I'll see how you cultivate an outer body incarnation. Don't beg me to save you when the time comes. Gai Tianyuan roared angrily and then fell silent. Clearly, Yi Xian had ruined his plan. Time passed little by little, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. During this year, Yi Xian had been reading the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. This inheritance was all recorded in the stone book, and Yi Xian had been studying it every day. It could be said that he had made some progress. However, this stone book was difficult to understand. Even though Yi Xian had passed the Chaos Trial and was now a Formation Grandmaster, he still found it extremely difficult to comprehend the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. Stars fall, Big Dipper line. What does this mean? Yi Xian frowned as he read the stone book in his hand. His eyes were filled with confusion because this stone book was too profound. The cultivation method described in it was only half understood. Of course, when Yi Xian was reading the stone book, he completely sealed Gai Tianyuan, not letting him see the inheritance in the stone book. This was because the Chaos Star Master's inheritance belonged to Yi Xian, and he definitely wouldn't let Gai Tianyuan see anything. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed and put away the stone book. Only then did he open the seal on Gai Tianyuan. Gai Tianyuan naturally knew that Yi Xian had sealed him to comprehend the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. Although he was furious, there was nothing he could do. Hearing Yi Xian's sigh, Gai Tianyuan sneered. Brat, so what if you obtained the Chaos Star Master's inheritance? Without unparalleled talent, you want to cultivate this inheritance? You're just dreaming. Humph, Yi Xian sneered. Indeed, I don't have unparalleled talent, but I'm still much stronger than you. After all, I passed the primal chaos trial, and you're still inferior to me. You. Gai Tianyuan originally wanted to take the opportunity to mock Yi Xian, but Yi Xian's retort hit his sore spot. He was on the verge of exploding in anger again, but he couldn't refute Yi Xian's words. After all, what Yi Xian said was the truth. If only Brother Bai Yi was here. With his talent, he would definitely be able to comprehend this stone book's mysteries, Yi Xian muttered. However, Yi Xian also knew that he had transformed into Yao Yuye's appearance to become the ninth spirit son and spread the news of his death. Although this was extremely beneficial to him, Yi Xian also knew that if Lu Baiyi knew of his death, he would probably be extremely grief-stricken. However, Yi Xian had no other choice. Only by doing so could he avoid a lot of trouble and not be watched by the heaven-mending sect all day long. This would allow him to have a peaceful cultivation environment. Not good, someone's coming. You have to be careful. Suddenly, Gai Tianyuan spoke in fear and instantly went silent in his sea of consciousness. Yi Xian's expression also changed. To be able to make Gai Tianyuan so cautious, this person was definitely not ordinary. As expected. After 3 breaths of time, a purple light quietly appeared in the myriad spirit palace. As the purple light dissipated, a cold-faced woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, she was sizing up Yi Xian with a frown. Chapter 1178. Yi Xian was shocked because he couldn't see through this woman's cultivation. Although she didn't reveal any aura, it made his heart tremble as if he was facing an extremely terrifying existence. Yao Yueye, you're getting bolder and bolder. You don't even know how to greet me? Violet Spirit's face was cold and her voice was like a 10,000-year-old glacier. Yi Xian was instantly awakened. His eyes moved and he quickly got up from the main seat. He then bowed to the woman but didn't say anything. Yi Xian knew that the more he spoke, the more likely he would make mistakes. He didn't know who this woman was, and if he called her by the wrong name, she would be suspicious. Yi Xian was absolutely certain that this woman was from the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Moreover, from the tone of her voice, this woman's status was definitely extremely high. Furthermore, she knew Yao Yuyi. If she were to discover any flaws, he would definitely suffer a great calamity. Seeing Yi Xian's eyebrows drooping, Violet Spirit was puzzled. What's wrong with you? I haven't seen you for so many years. Why are you getting weirder? As Violet Spirit spoke, a ray of purple light flashed across her eyes and she looked at Yi Xian. Seeing that he wasn't a transformed person, she let go of the suspicion in her heart. Violet Spirit stepped forward and sat in Yi Xian's seat. Then she looked at Yi Xian and said, after so many years, you're still so useless. Your cultivation has actually fallen to the great Saint King realm. It seems that you 12 spirit sons are getting more and more outrageous. Yi Xian didn't dare to answer. He was afraid that he would reveal any flaws. This woman's cultivation was too terrifying. If he attracted her suspicion, it would be extremely bad. Why aren't you speaking? Violet Spirit asked suspiciously. Although she hadn't seen Yao Yueye for many years, she still had a deep impression of him. Yao Yueye was extremely low-key among the 12 spirit sons. This was also related to his cultivation. Every time he saw her, he would be full of flattery. Why was he so silent today? At this moment, Yi Xian's heart was in turmoil, but he knew that he had to answer. Otherwise, he would definitely arouse the suspicion of this terrifying woman. Puff! Suddenly, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body staggered backwards, and his entire body went limp on the ground. This sudden turn of events caused Violet Spirit's expression to change. "You're injured?" Violet Spirit asked in surprise. "During the battle with Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul, not only did I use the Grand Primal Chaos Teleportation Talisman, I even used various life-saving techniques. Although I managed to kill him in the end, I also suffered heavy injuries." Yi Xian put on airs as he spoke. You're really useless. You actually put yourself in such a difficult situation. You, ninth spirit, have really disappointed me." Ziling frowned and scolded. "Take it." Although Violet Spirit was scolding Yi Xian, she waved her hand and sent out a beam of spiritual light. Yi Xian quickly caught it, and a golden medicinal pill appeared. "Eat this heavenly spirit pill. It should be enough to heal your injuries. Once you've recovered, tell me what happened," Violet Spirit said coldly. "Thank you, Fairy." Yi Xian hurriedly bowed. "Fairy?" Violet Spirit was slightly startled. She then coldly smiled at Yi Xian and said, "You've always called me Sacred Emissary Violet Spirit. Why are you calling me Fairy today? It seems that after so many years, your cultivation hasn't improved much, but your flattery skills have improved quite a bit." Yi Xian was shocked. He knew that he had said the wrong thing. Fortunately, she didn't suspect him. This also made him secretly sigh in relief. He even learned her real name. "Go. Heal your injuries first. I still have some things to ask you about Gai Tianyuan," Violet Spirit said coldly. "Yes." Yi Xian hurriedly left. Violet Spirit coldly shook her head. After so many years, Yao Yueye really hadn't improved at all. Every time he saw her, he would be submissive. However, Violet Spirit also knew that it wasn't just Yao Yueye. The other spirit sons were the same. When they saw her, they were all very respectful. This wasn't just because of her cultivation, but also because of her special identity. "I wonder if Yao Yueye obtained the inheritance of a Chaos Star Master," Violet Spirit muttered to herself. On the other side, Yi Xian left the All-Spirits Palace and quickly entered seclusion. Although the experience just now wasn't dangerous, Yi Xian was still very careful. He was afraid of arousing the woman's suspicion. "Good fellow, I didn't expect this little girl to come to the southern Dou territory." Suddenly, Gai Tianyuan's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "You know this woman?" Yi Xian said gloomily. Back then, before the Lord of all Spirits attained Tao, this little girl Violet Spirit followed him. She was Yi Lingtian's maid. I didn't expect that after more than 100 million years, this little girl's cultivation has already reached the extreme Yin realm. Gai Tianyuan sneered. "Yi Lingtian?" Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Lingtian is the real name of the Lord of all Spirits. The will of Lingtian, the Lord of all Spirits. I'm sure very few people know his real name now, right? Gai Tianyuan laughed at himself. "But it's interesting. Your surname is Yi, and so is the Lord of all Spirits. If you weren't immortal, perhaps I would have thought you were Yi Lingtian's descendant. After all, to be able to possess 3 supreme powers, you're definitely not an ordinary person," Gai Tianyuan joked. "Shut up." Yi Xian scolded coldly. He didn't expect Gai Tianyuan to be in the mood to joke with him. "You said this woman is at the extreme Yin realm?" Yi Xian asked in a low voice. "That's right. This woman is already at the peak of the extreme Yin realm. In my opinion, she will reach the extreme Yang realm in less than 30 million years. However, although her cultivation is 2 realms higher than yours, you've changed into Yao Yueye. She can't see your true form at all. Naturally, she won't be a threat to you, Gai Tianyuan said. The Saint Realm, the Creation Realm, and the Yin-Yang Realm. At this moment, Yi Xian hadn't even reached the Creation Realm, let alone the Yin-Yang Realm. This was an extremely heavy pressure for Yi Xian. But what you need to pay attention to now is not to expose your identity. I'm guessing that this little girl Violet Spirit came to the southern Dou territory on Yulingtian's orders. It must be for the inheritance of the Chaos Star Masters, Gai Tianyuan said with certainty. Hearing Gai Tianyuan's words, Yi Xian slowly nodded in agreement. Fortunately, he left himself a way out and didn't kill Yao Yueye. Now, it seemed that this was the right choice. Buzz! Yi Xian flipped his hand and a gourd appeared in his hand. As he opened the mouth of the gourd, a wisp of smoke came out. As the smoke dissipated, Yao Yueye appeared in front of Yi Xian, covered in blood. Brother Yi, let me go. I beg you. No matter what you want me to do, I'll do it. Bang! Yao Yueye knelt at Yi Xian's feet and begged in a sorrowful voice. He was really scared. How could he still have the dignity of the ninth spirit son? Chapter 1179. Being trapped in a small gourd in complete darkness and silence, Yao Yuyi was almost driven mad. Now that he had escaped from the gourd, he really did not want to go back to that dark environment. Brother Yao, do you know the woman Purple Spirit? Yi Xian asked with narrowed eyes. Saint Envoy Purple Spirit? Yao Yuyi was shocked and his face lit up with joy. But when he saw Yi Xian turn into his own appearance and stare at him with a gloomy face, Yao Yuye's heart trembled and his face turned bitter and helpless. Saint Envoy Purple Spirit is incomparably noble, I naturally know her. Yao Yuyi answered helplessly. Brother Yao, I don't want to waste my breath on you. I can promise not to kill you and I can return your freedom in the future, but I need your cooperation. Tell me everything you know about this Purple Spirit. Yi Xian said coldly. What happened next was simple. Under Yi Xian's coercion, Yao Yuyi had no choice but to compromise with Yi Xian and tell Yi Xian everything he knew. As time passed, from Yao Yuye's narration, Yi Xian obtained extremely useful information and knew how he should face Purple Spirit. The miserable Yao Yuyi was once again sucked into the gourd and no matter how sorrowfully he begged Yi Xian chose to ignore him. Myriad Spirit Palace. You've recovered from your injuries? Purple Spirit sat on the seat of honor and looked at Yi Xian indifferently. Thank you Saint Envoy for the medicine. My injuries have recovered but the drop in my cultivation level will require time to cultivate again. Yi Xian replied with a smile. At that moment, Yi Xian was really like Yao Yuyi, showing the demeanor of a graceful gentleman. Yao Yuye's face was already devilishly handsome, giving people a sense of breathtaking. Purple Spirit could be said to hate Yao Yuyi because she hated Yao Yuyi acting like a woman. However, Violet Spirit did not doubt Yi Xian's identity at all. After all, her impression of Yao Yuyi was like this. You're ranked 9th out of the 12 Spirit Sons. You've fallen from a 9 Heavens Saint King to a great Saint King. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the 9th Spirit Son. However, you killed Gai Tianyuan and obtained the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. It's all worth it, Violet Spirit said coldly. Sacred Emissary Purple Spirit, you've misunderstood. I didn't receive the inheritance of a chaotic Star Master. Yi Xian had already guessed Purple Spirit's intentions and immediately denied it. What kind of joke was this? If Yi Xian admitted that the Chaos Star Master's inheritance was in his hands, he would probably be dragged back to the central region to meet the Lord of all Spirits. It's not in your hands. Violet Spirit frowned. Sacred Emissary, although I killed Gai Tianyuan, I didn't see the Chaos Star Master's inheritance. Everything I said is true. I don't dare to lie to you, Sacred Emissary, Yi Xian said sincerely. Looking at Yi Xian's extremely sincere expression, Violet Spirit directly believed his words. She knew very well that Yi Xian wouldn't dare to lie to her because lying to her was the same as lying to the Lord of all spirits. Yao Yuyi didn't have the guts to do so. Unfortunately, Violet's spirit didn't know that the person standing in front of her wasn't Yao Yuyi. How could this be? Violet's spirit frowned and muttered softly. The Heaven Master said that the Chaos Star Master had appeared and told me to come to the southern region to search for it. If you didn't receive the inheritance, then who did? As soon as Violet's spirit finished speaking, Yi Xian was shocked. However, his expression remained calm, but his heart had long since been filled with monstrous waves. Sacred Emissary, there was a person called Yi Xian who was hunted down by Gai Tianyuan. Afterwards, he found the Myriad Spirit Palace. Yi Xian had already prepared his explanation one by one. He told Violet's spirit about the series of events that had happened. Naturally, there was a lot of water mixed into it. I killed Yi Xian and Gai Tianyuan, but I didn't find the Chaos Star Master's inheritance on them. However, I did learn about the ruins of the Tianyuan kingdom. Perhaps the Chaos Star Master's inheritance is there, Yi Xian said quickly. Looks like I'll have to personally go to the ruins of the Tianyuan kingdom, Violet's spirit murmured after hearing Yi Xian's story. She then suddenly stood up and walked towards the outside world. Cultivate here for now. When I return to the central region, you can come with me. Violet's spirit had already left, but her voice constantly echoed in Yi Xian's ears. Farewell, Sacred Emissary Violet Spirit. Yi Xian clasped his hands and bowed. However, his lips curled into a strange smile. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Yi Xian was the only one left in the Myriad Spirit Palace. Gai Tianyuan's voice rang out in Yi Xian's head. Although this girl's cultivation is much higher than yours, she's too simple-minded. How can she be your opponent? If you can make good use of her, she might be of great help to you, Gai Tianyuan said with a sinister smile. Yi Xian looked in the direction Violet's spirit had left in and snorted coldly. High and mighty. Full of a sense of superiority. This girl has never been through life and death. She doesn't know what it means to be sinister. No matter how high her cultivation is, it'll only take an instant for me to toy with her to death. But you're right. I'm now the 9th spiritual son. Sooner or later, I'll go to the Central Territory. This silly girl has a high status in the Myriad Spirit Palace. If I can make good use of her, she'll be of great help to me, Yi Xian said with a cold smile. Yi Xian, don't be arrogant. After all, this girl's cultivation is much higher than yours. If she finds out that you're making use of her, I'm afraid you'll die without a burial place, Gai Tianyuan said. Arrogant? Yi Xian said with a strange smile. I'm not arrogant. Women are women. They're just men's accessories. To put it bluntly, they're just playthings. Since ancient times, beauties have caused trouble. Many heroes have been defeated by women. It's a pity that I, Yi Xian, only treat women as tools. It'll be fine if she's obedient. However, if she doesn't listen to me, I'll definitely take her life. After all, a silly girl in the Yin realm is a great nourishment. Yi Xian said strangely. Boy, you're really ruthless. Gai Tianyuan's voice was complicated. He had seen Yi Xian's character firsthand. It reminded him of some unbearable past. Back then, Gai Tianyuan had also gone crazy for a woman. However, in the end, he was heartbroken and was left far behind by the Myriad Spirit Palace. If he had Yi Xian's character of treating women like playthings, he wouldn't have ended up like this today. At this moment, Gai Tianyuan felt a little pity for Violet's spirit. Of all the people she could have met, she just had to meet Yi Xian. Even if this little girl's cultivation was high, she would probably be tricked to death by Yi Xian. After all, Gai Tianyuan had personally experienced Yi Xian's methods. Even he had been tricked by Yi Xian to this extent. How could a little girl be a match for Yi Xian? Chapter 1180. madly accumulating wealth and eating unsightly. This sentence was used to describe a greedy person, but it couldn't be more suitable for Yi Xian. 1,000 years passed quickly. Yi Xian relied on his identity as the ninth spirit son to crazily plunder all kinds of cultivation resources. Anything that caught his eye was taken away. Unfortunately, he only found 3 pieces of the chaotic 5 elemental stone. Including the earth spirit stone in Yi Xian's hands, he already had 4 pieces. Now, he was only missing the last piece, the water spirit stone. However, after 100 years, there was no news of the water spirit stone. This made Yi Xian feel very bad. Although he didn't have the chaotic 5 elemental stone, Yi Xian had secretly devoured countless great sages in the past 100 years. His cultivation was also gradually increasing. The most important problem was that Yi Xian had already comprehended the first level of the chaotic star master and knew the real name of the stone book in his hands. Astral Origin Art. These 3 simple words seemed very ordinary, but this was the inheritance of a chaos star master. Yi Xian had spent 100 years just to cultivate the first level. This couldn't be said to be slow. This was also because Yi Xian had passed the chaotic star master's trial. Otherwise, even if he had millions of years, he wouldn't be able to comprehend the first level of the astral origin art. There were 9 levels of the astral origin art. Once one reached the peak of 9 levels and the 9 levels of the astral origin art combined, one could become the only chaotic star master in history. Turning the chaotic universe into a chessboard and everything in the world into chess pieces. The terror of this was not something that could be described with words. Simply put, the astral origin art was divided into 9 levels. Every time Yi Xian cultivated a level, he would comprehend an ancient formation. There were a total of 9 formations in the astral origin art. When Yi Xian cultivated the star origin incantation to the 9th layer, he would also control the 9 great formations. When he could fuse the 9 great formations into one, he would transform into the legendary Chaos Star Master. Unfortunately, although Yi Xian had comprehended the first level of the astral origin art, he didn't cultivate the chaotic star master's inheritance. Some people might wonder why Yi Xian had comprehended the first level of the astral origin art but didn't cultivate it. The reason was simple. It was mentioned before that a person's energy was limited, and there was also a saying that one shouldn't bite off more than they could chew. Yi Xian wasn't Lu Bai. He didn't have Lu Bai's number 1 talent. He cultivated the power of time and space and the power of nirvanic extermination. Just these 2 supreme techniques were enough to exhaust him. If he continued to cultivate the astral origin incantation, his cultivation base would be too heterogeneous. Not only would it not make him stronger, it would also drag down his own cultivation base. Therefore, according to Yi Xian's plan, the astral origin art was meant for his avatar to cultivate. It wasn't just the astral origin art. There was also the boundless secular world technique. Only in this way could Yi Xian have the best of both worlds. This was also the reason why Yi Xian was so eager to collect the primal chaos 5 elemental beads. Only by cultivating an external incarnation could he carry out his plan. Although Yi Xian hadn't cultivated the first level of the astral origin art, he had a crazy idea that he was putting into action. Body refinement. Yes, it was body refinement. Yi Xian made a bold guess. Every time he cultivated the astral origin art to a new level, he would gain control of an ancient grand formation. If he could engrave this formation on his body, wouldn't it make his body terrifying to the extreme? Yi Xian placed great importance on the strength of his physical body. In the past, he had relied on his terrifying physical body to achieve success in every endeavor. Therefore, he placed great importance on the refinement of his physical body. What kind of person was Yi Xian? He was a daring person who dared to do crazy things for the sake of his cultivation base. Therefore, Yi Xian dared to do whatever he wanted. At this moment, he was acting according to his crazy idea. Ah! Inside the myriad spirit sky palace. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air, starlight runes intertwining on his body. Extremely shrill screams of pain reverberated throughout the myriad spirits' palace. It was as if 10,000 ants were gnawing at his heart. Large amounts of cold sweat drenched Yi Xian's entire body. Large amounts of blood mist gradually seeped out of his body. The veins on his forehead wriggled like maggots. This was proof of the terrifying torture Yi Xian was enduring. Primal Chaos Spirit Gathering Formation. This was the first level of the astral origin art that Yi Xian had comprehended. He had engraved this formation on his body while he was still alive. That kind of pain that was worse than death was practically enough to shatter Yi Xian's soul. Yi Xian's method was undoubtedly crazy. No one had ever done something like this before. It must be known that every Yuanhui could only produce one Chaos Star Master, and Chaos Star Masters did not cultivate their bodies. They relied entirely on the Tao of formations to defeat their enemies. They were also compatible with the chaotic universe. At this moment, Yi Xian was doing the opposite. He engraved the first formation he'd comprehended onto his own body. This was something that no one dared to imagine. If he wasn't careful, his body might collapse. Yi Xian did not know if the previous 9 Chaos Star Masters had done this before, but he knew that he was on the right path. Although his body felt like it was about to explode, he could completely feel that his body was undergoing a qualitative upgrade. Bind! Yi Xian formed a seal with both of his hands as he let out a loud roar. Rays of starlight continuously engraved onto his body, and extremely profound star runes appeared on the surface of his body, causing him to appear mysterious and profound at a glance. Time passed. After 1,000 years, Yi Xian was completely covered by a nebula. Only an obscure aura faintly seeped out. Bang! Suddenly, the nebula exploded, and Yi Xian's figure appeared. His entire body was erupting with resplendent starlight. The spiritual qi in the surroundings whistled toward him. Buzz! Yi Xian seemed to have transformed into a spiritual qi whirlpool. His entire body was covered by spiritual qi. Starlight runes appeared on his body, interweaving into a strange formation that constantly flowed on the surface of his body. Success! Yi Xian muttered to himself. The formation runes on his body gradually faded away, but his skin was as white as jade and faintly revealed an oppressive aura. Chaos Spirit Gathering Formation. This is only the first formation of the astral origin art, but it already allows my body to automatically absorb the spiritual qi of the world and continuously transform my body. This Chaos Star Master's inheritance is truly terrifying, Yi Xian muttered excitedly. No one knew what Yi Xian was feeling at that moment. He was extremely excited. In the past, Yi Xian's body had to be personally refined by him. It could be said that it consumed a lot of his energy. However, after engraving the Chaos Spirit Gathering Formation, his body began to automatically absorb the surrounding spiritual qi, constantly strengthening his body. Although it was not obvious yet, one had to know that the body was automatically absorbing spiritual qi. Under the situation of accumulation over time, there would definitely be an unimaginable transformation. Engraving the first formation of the astral origin art. Although it was very risky, it seems like it was worth it, Yi Xian muttered to himself. Spiritual Sun, Sacred Emissary Purple Spirit has returned. Just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, he heard a voice from outside. This also brought Yi Xian back to reality. Chapter 1181. Got it. I'll go welcome Sacred Emissary Purple Spirit now. Yi Xian said as he walked outside. He wasn't surprised by Purple Spirit's return. Back then, Purple Spirit had gone to the ruins of the Tianyuan Kingdom, but she hadn't found anything. After that, she had been searching for the Chaos Star Master's inheritance in the southern Dou region, but she hadn't found anything useful. During this period of time, Yi Xian had also met Violet Spirit several times. Under Yi Xian's intentional fawning, Violet Spirit's relationship with him wasn't as unfamiliar as before. Instead, they became more familiar with each other and even started to address each other as brother and sister. That's just how women are. Yi Xian understood women too well. Under his flattery, Purple Spirit was naturally very friendly to him. One had to admit that Yi Xian's methods were superb. Face-retaining pills, fountain of youth, all kinds of strange things, and all kinds of things that Purple Spirit had never seen before. Yi Xian used almost everything he could think of. As the saying goes, everyone has a love for beauty, especially women who value their looks the most. Even the Purple Spirit was not an exception. Purple Spirit had a lot of cultivation resources, but she didn't have any face-retaining pills, fountain of youth, and other spiritual items because they were useless for cultivation. When she took the first face-retaining pill, she realized that her appearance had become more exquisite. She was overjoyed and took all the face-retaining pills from Yi Xian. Under Yi Xian's flattery, Purple Spirit completely treated Yi Xian as one of her own. She didn't care about finding the Chaos Star Master's inheritance anymore. Instead, she spent every day with Yi Xian and occasionally went to the mortal world to play. She was like a little girl who had never seen the world. Little brother. Purple Spirit walked into the Myriad Spirit Palace. Yi Xian went to welcome her with a smile and even shamelessly called her big sister Purple Spirit. Big sister, you've been gone for 1,000 years. Did you find any clues about the Chaos Star Master? Yi Xian smiled. Sigh. At the mention of the Chaos Star Masters, Violet Spirit let out a long sigh. We don't have any clues at all. I really don't know how to explain this to the Heaven Master. Sister, there's no need to worry. Chaos Star Masters are extraordinary. I'm sure the Heavenly Master won't blame you, Yi Xian said hypocritically. The Heavenly Master has always thought highly of me. Although he won't blame me for not completing the mission this time, I still feel like I've let the Heavenly Master down, Violet Spirit said, ashamed. By the way, didn't you say you were going to give me a present when I came back? Violet Spirit's eyes lit up as she looked at Yi Xian expectantly. Little brother naturally didn't forget. Elder sister, what is this? Yi Xian's eyes flickered. A medicinal pill appeared in his hand and he eagerly offered it to Violet Spirit. This is... Violet Spirit was slightly taken aback. She really didn't recognize the pill in Yi Xian's hand. This is the Extreme Beauty Pill. When a woman takes this pill, her complexion will glow. It can also cleanse her meridians and make her even more beautiful. Of course, with elder sister's peerless appearance and cultivation, you naturally don't need this. Little brother is just icing on the cake, Yi Xian said flatteringly. Little brother, thank you. Violet Spirit happily accepted the pill with a happy expression. The more she looked at Yi Xian, the more she liked him. Why didn't she realize that this ninth spirit son was so pleasing to the eye? Looking at Violet Spirit's excited expression, Yi Xian's lips curled into a strange smile. It was easy for him to please a woman who hadn't seen much of the world. Elder sister, I've also prepared some mortal toys for you. As Yi Xian spoke, he waved his hand and summoned some small toys made by skilled craftsmen. The two of them immediately started fiddling with them in full swing. To be honest, Yi Xian had no interest in these things at all. If not for Violet Spirit's childlike fondness for these things, he wouldn't have bothered to make them. But Yi Xian really had a barrier in his heart. To call a little girl elder sister, even if Yi Xian was extremely black-bellied, he still felt a little embarrassed. Of course, Violet Spirit's age was much older than his, but her knowledge and temperament were still stuck in the age of a young girl. To Yi Xian, Violet Spirit was just a silly little girl who didn't know what it meant to have a sinister heart. According to Yi Xian's deduction, Violet Spirit had always been by the side of the Lord of all Spirits and had never experienced any hardships. Wherever she went, she was the center of attention. Although she was a little arrogant, as long as he made good use of her, she would be a sharp weapon in his hands. Report. Just as Yi Xian was accompanying Violet Spirit in fiddling with these little toys, a guard walked in quickly. What's the matter? Yi Xian strode over to the guard, but Violet Spirit was still focused on fiddling with the little toys Yi Xian had given her and did not notice the guard's arrival. Lingzi, the water spirit pearl has been found. Oh. Where is it? Yi Xian's eyes lit up, a look of ecstasy flashing across his eyes. As the saying goes, hard work pays off. He never thought that the last water spirit pearl would actually appear. It's. The guard hesitated, his face pale. Looking at the guard's trembling face, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat and his eyes narrowed. Where is it? Feeling Yi Xian's cold gaze, the guard hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. Returning to the spirit child, the water spirit pearl has indeed been found. However, this item is in the Undying Branch Hall. The two Supreme Elders came to ask for it, but they were severely injured. Undying Division. Yi Xian was suddenly stunned, and his expression instantly became complicated. Because the Undying Division was an orthodoxy under the Undying Heaven Palace, and also a division in the southern Do Great Region. Yi Xian was very clear that the 5 great regions had branches of the 10 major orthodoxies. It was just that the 10th epoch was controlled by the 10,000 Spirit Heaven Palace. The other 9 orthodoxies were aloof and rarely appeared in the world. He did not expect the Water Spirit Pearl to be in the Undying Division. Who injured the 2 Grand Elders? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Venerable Water Yuan, also the current Hall Master of the Undying Division. His cultivation is at the Nirvana realm, and it is rumored that he is about to step into the Origin Returning realm. That is why the 2 Grand Elders were defeated. The guard spoke in fear. I understand, you may leave. Yi Xian nodded slowly, and the guard also hurriedly left. Undying Division. Venerable Water Yuan. A trace of killing intent flashed across Yi Xian's eyes, and a cruel smile curled up from the corner of his mouth. Yi Xian knew that he was not a match for a Nirvana creation realm existence. However, he must obtain the Water Spirit Pearl, and it was also time for this silly woman, Violet Spirit, to use her. However, the other party was from the Undying Heaven Palace, and this was indeed a little difficult. After all, the Undying Heaven Palace was an orthodoxy created by the Undying Heaven Lord. Although the 10th epoch was controlled by the 10,000 Spirit Heaven Palace, the Undying Heaven Palace would not be afraid of the 10,000 Spirit Heaven Palace. However, Yi Xian did not care whether the other party was from the Undying Heaven Palace or not. Even if the 2 orthodoxies fought to the death, it had nothing to do with him. Big sister, little brother has a request. Yi Xian made up his mind and strode towards Violet Spirit. The big sister in his mouth was unusually affectionate, and his face revealed a difficult expression. Chapter 1182. Don't tell me you want me to help you kill this venerable Water Yuan. Violet Spirit frowned. I dare not lie to you, sister. The reason I gathered the Chaos 5 Elemental Bead is to return to the 9 Heaven Saint King realm. I've already found the other 4 beads and I'm only missing the last one. If you don't help me, I don't know when I'll be able to cultivate to the 9 Heaven Saint King realm again. Yi Xian pretended to sigh. Little brother, it's not that I don't want to help you. You must know that the Immortal Heaven Palace is aloof from worldly affairs and has never interfered with our 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Although our 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace is in charge of the 10th Eon, the Heavenly Lord has ordered us not to fight with the 9 Supreme Orthodoxies. Violet Spirit explained with a troubled expression. Big sister, you misunderstood. Actually, I only want to obtain this Water Spirit Pearl, not to form an enmity with the Undying Heavenly Palace. With your cultivation and status, I believe that Venerable Water Yuan will definitely give you face. Yi Xian said softly. As the saying goes, one's mouth is soft when one receives gifts. Although Violet Spirit had some misgivings, she couldn't really reject Yi Xian's request. Moreover, it was just a Water Spirit bead. Violet Spirit didn't think it was difficult to do. Alright, I'll go with you to the Immortal Palace. However, we mustn't fight. You must remember. Violet's spirit finally agreed. However, she didn't forget to remind Yi Xian. Thank you, sister. I will never forget your kindness. Yi Xian smiled hypocritically and thanked Violet's spirit repeatedly. As for whether they would fight, it wasn't up to Violet's spirit to decide. The Immortal Palace. Venerable Water Yuan sat on the main seat with 8 elders on both sides. Many disciples bowed to the palace. The entire Immortal Palace was extremely quiet. The 10,000 Spirit Palace is getting more and more out of hand. They even dare to come to me and ask for the Chaos Water Spirit Bead. Venerable Water Yuan said coldly. Palace Master, the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace is like the sun in the sky. With them in charge of the 10th Eon, it's expected that they would act without any scruples. An elder spoke up. Humph, Venerable Water Yuan snorted coldly and said, back then, our immortal heavenly palace once ruled over a Yuan Hui. The immortal heavenly lord suppressed the primal chaos from ancient to modern times. Even if the current era isn't ruled by the immortal heavenly lord, our immortal heavenly palace isn't easy to bully. As soon as Venerable Shui Yuan finished speaking, everyone present chimed in one after another. They did not take the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace to heart. To put it bluntly, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace's history was only slightly more than 100 million years, while the Immortal Heavenly Palace had survived for several epochs. Even among the 10 strongest orthodoxies, they were definitely ranked in the top 5. The Immortal. Immortal 2. After the 10th Eon, the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace would end the rule of this Eon. When the next Eon began, the Master of all Spirits would pass down a decree to let his orthodoxy fade out of the stage of the chaotic world. He would wait for the next Immortal to be born and take charge of the new Eon. This was a rule that all the 10 great orthodoxies knew. No one knew why this rule existed, but no one dared to violate the order of the Immortal. However, although the top 10 orthodoxies would not fight too fiercely, they would still compete for the seat of the strongest of all time in the next Yuan Hui. This was also the unchanging law of the chaotic world, and the strongest of all time acquiesced to this matter. The Immortal Heaven Palace was full of talents in this generation. The divine sun they cultivated was extremely terrifying. It was said that he had reached the Yin-Yang realm and was a popular candidate for the next Eon. Report. Just as Venerable Water Yuan and others were talking, a disciple quickly entered the Immortal Heaven Palace. He looked panicked. Why are you so flustered? Venerable Water Yuan frowned. Palace Master, someone from the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace is waiting outside. The disciple said in a panic. Humph. Venerable Water Yuan's face turned cold. I just taught them a lesson, and they still don't know when to stop. The people from the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace are too arrogant. Did they tell us their names? An elder asked. One claimed to be the 9th spiritual son, and the other was a woman called Purple Spirit. The disciple quickly replied. What? Venerable Water Yuan's face changed drastically. He stood up abruptly. His face was full of shock, and his aura instantly became heavy. Purple Spirit? Venerable Water Yuan looked solemn. He was very sure that the person called Purple Spirit in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace must be the extremely terrifying woman. Purple Spirit was the maid of the Master of 10,000 Spirit Sky. This was definitely not a secret among the major sections. Venerable Water Yuan did not expect that she would come to the Great Southern Dou region and personally come to the Immortal Heaven Palace. However, Venerable Water Yuan was not very afraid. After all, he was backed by the Immortal Heaven Palace. Even if Purple Spirit's cultivation was a realm higher than his, she would not dare to behave atrociously in the Immortal Heaven Palace. Very well, let me meet this sacred emissary Purple Spirit. Venerable Water Yuan said in a low voice and strode out of the Immortal Heaven Palace. The other elders and disciples quickly followed. This was the so-called foundation of a major sect. Even in the face of a powerful enemy, they had no fear at all. This was the terrifying aspect of the 9 great orthodoxies. In the outside world, Yi Xian and Purple Spirit stood side by side. The two were chatting happily. Of course, Yi Xian was the one talking. He would occasionally flatter Purple Spirit, and Purple Spirit would occasionally laugh in joy. Yi Xian was a person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Before he had absolute strength, he wanted to use everything he could to achieve his goals. As for his so-called status, he naturally had to lower himself a little. Ha ha ha. I've always heard of sacred emissary Purple Spirit's fame in the Central Territory. Today, I see that the rumors are true. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came. Venerable Water Yuan led the elders towards Yi Xian and Purple Spirit. In less than 3 breaths, they arrived before the two. Your Venerable Water Yuan. The smile on Purple Spirit's face disappeared. Her attitude returned to being arrogant. Clearly, Purple Spirit was able to chat and laugh with Yi Xian because she treated Yi Xian as one of her own. However, to outsiders, she was a sacred emissary of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Naturally, she had her pride. I'm Shui Yuan. Greetings, fellow Taoist Purple Spirit. Venerable Water Yuan was neither servile nor overbearing. He cupped his fists slightly, indicating that he had interacted with Purple Spirit before. Although his cultivation was not as strong as Purple Spirit, he represented the Immortal Heaven Palace. If he showed any humble attitude, it would be a disgrace to the Immortal Heaven Palace. Purple Spirit did not mind Venerable Water Yuan's attitude. After all, he was a member of the Immortal Heaven Palace. Both of them were on the same level. Moreover, she came here to help Yi Xian ask for the Water Spirit Pearl. She was not here to cause trouble. Chapter 1183. Fellow Taoist Shui Yuan, I heard that you have a chaotic Water Spirit Pearl. I, Hao Lingzi, happen to need it to heal my injuries. I hope you can fulfill my wish. Of course, my 10,000 Spirit Palace will not take your things for free. I have 100 Spirit Pill here that I can exchange with you. After saying that, Ziling flipped her hand to summon out a milky white medicinal pill. A medicinal aroma wafted out from it. Just inhaling a whiff of the medicinal aroma was enough to make one's cultivation base rise and fall. Clearly, this medicinal pill was a precious treasure. 100 Spirit Pill. Venerable Shui Yuan's eyes lit up. The 10,000 Spirit Palace had several kinds of pills that were treasures for cultivation. 10 Spirit Pill, 100 Spirit Pill, 1,000 Spirit Pill, and the legendary 10,000 Spirit Pill. The 100 Spirit Pill in Violet Spirit's hand was enough for her cultivation to improve greatly. Exchanging the 100 Spirit Pill for the chaotic Water Spirit Pearl was indeed fair. Although Venerable Shui Yuan was a little tempted, he still shook his head and refused. Fellow Taoist Violet Spirit, although the 100 Spirit Pill is good, I can't exchange it with you because I cultivate the 3-origin holy water technique. This chaotic Water Spirit Pearl is comparable to my life. I hope you can understand. How about 2? Violet Spirit frowned and took out another 100 Spirit Pill. This also caused Yi Xian to slightly raise his eyebrows. It seemed that this little girl, Violet Spirit, was indeed rich. She could casually take out 200 Spirit Pills. It was likely that she still had countless treasures in her heaven and earth pouch. Fellow Taoist, you misunderstand. It's not that I don't want to exchange it with you, but the chaotic Water Spirit Pearl has already fused with my saint soul. If I take it out by force, it will definitely harm my life. Venerable Shui Yuan refused tactfully. This. Violet Spirit frowned after hearing Venerable Shui Yuan's explanation. It seemed that he really couldn't take out the chaotic Water Spirit Pearl. It seemed that she really couldn't help Yi Xian this time. In that case, we will. Violet Spirit was just about to leave. Since she couldn't exchange it, there was no need for her and Yi Xian to stay. Furthermore, according to Violet Spirit's thoughts, it was merely a chaotic water spirit bead. There were still over 10 of these beads left in the Myriad Miles Sky Palace. As long as she brought Yi Xian back to the Grand Central Territory, she could take one out and give it to Yi Xian. It was only a matter of time. Unfortunately, even though Violet Spirit's idea was good, Yi Xian simply couldn't wait until he reached the Great Central Region to obtain the Water Spirit Pearl. This was because he wanted to cultivate an avatar before heading to the Grand Central Region. This was his true goal and also a life-saving measure. Without waiting for Violet Spirit to bid farewell and leave, Yi Xian took a step forward and coldly snorted as he shouted, "You injured 2 supreme elders of my 10,000 spirit palace. Don't tell me you don't want to give me an explanation. Little brother, you." Violet Spirit's expression changed. She never thought that Yi Xian would actually make things difficult for Venerable Water Yuan. In fact, this matter was just a small matter to Violet Spirit because it was impossible for the 10 great orthodoxies to not have any conflicts before. Basically, they had all been reduced to small matters. This was also the reason why she didn't mention this matter before. 9th Spiritual Son, what is the meaning of this? If it was the divine son of the Immortal Heaven Palace, Venerable Water Yuan wouldn't even dare to let out a fart. However, he wouldn't allow the spiritual son of the Myriad Spirit Sky Palace to humiliate him. What do I mean? Yi Xian smiled sinisterly and said, "It was indeed rash of my 2 grand elders to ask for the Water Spirit Pearl. However, by injuring them, it means that you have no respect for my Myriad Spirit Sky Palace. All lands under the heavens belong to the king. All lands under the heavens belong to the king. My Myriad Spirit Sky Palace is in charge of the 10th Yuan Hui. All orthodoxies must submit to us. Don't you understand this principle?" Yi Xian shouted. Ha ha ha. Venerable Water Yuan laughed maniacally and looked at Yi Xian sinisterly. He said, "You can say this to any orthodoxy, but it definitely doesn't include my Immortal Heaven Palace. My Immortal Heaven Lord has existed since time immemorial. My Immortal Heaven Palace has existed for many Yuan Hui. Even during the dark era of the Heaven-Devouring Devil Palace, the Heaven-Devouring Devil Palace didn't dare to say such arrogant words to my Immortal Heaven Palace. How dare you?" Yi Xian pretended to be furious. A blood moon rose behind him and struck a great arc towards Venerable Water Yuan. However, Venerable Water Yuan was in the Nirvana creation realm. He didn't care about Yi Xian's attack at all. "What 9th spiritual son? You are merely in the Great Sage King realm. Not to mention my Hall spiritual son, you are still far from being comparable to me." Rumble. The water curtain covered the sky and the holy light of creation. Venerable Water Yuan's 5 fingers reached up to the sky and slapped down on Yi Xian. The whole area turned into a vast ocean and slammed down on Yi Xian violently. "How dare you?" Violet Spirit's face was cold and her voice was like a 10,000-year-old glacier. She didn't seem to have done anything. She merely stretched out her jade-like hand and the whole area collapsed instantly. The water curtain that covered the sky exploded. Barf! Venerable Water Yuan staggered back and spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, he couldn't even block a single attack from an extreme Yin Realm Master. Well. It seems that your 10,000 Spirit Palace wants to declare war on my Immortal Heaven Palace. The corner of Venerable Water Yuan's mouth was stained with blood. Violet Spirit's attack had injured him quite a bit. This also caused him to roar furiously at Yi Xian and the other 2. "So what if we declare war? Do you really think that my 10,000 Spirit Palace is afraid of your Immortal Heaven Palace?" Yi Xian added fuel to the fire without any hesitation. "Little brother, don't talk nonsense." Violet Spirit hurriedly reprimanded him because this was no laughing matter. If the two orthodoxies started a war over such a trivial matter, she wouldn't be able to bear the consequences even if she was the maid of the master of 10,000 Spirit Palace. Sister, you came here in person and this venerable water Yuan didn't give you any face. If what happened today is spread out, you'll be ridiculed by others. They'll even say that our 10,000 Spirit Palace is afraid of the Immortal Heaven Palace. How are we going to survive when we return to the Grand Central Territory? Yi Xian secretly transmitted his voice to Violet Spirit. But, he's from the Immortal Heaven Palace. Violet Spirit hesitated. Clearly, Violet Spirit still had some reservations. If she really went all out, she was afraid that it would cause a conflict between the two orthodoxies. What are you afraid of? Venerable Water Yuan is just a manifestation realm cultivator. Will the Immortal Heaven Palace really start a war with my 10,000 Spirit Palace over such a small figure? Even if the Immortal Heaven Palace starts a war with my 10,000 Spirit Palace over a manifestation realm cultivator, my 10,000 Spirit Palace is in charge of the 10th Yuan Hui. Under the leadership of the Master of 10,000 Spirit Palace, we can sweep through the entire Grand Central Territory. Why would we be afraid of the Immortal Heaven Palace? Yi Xian was glib-tongued and incited Violet Spirit continuously. Violet Spirit was too naive. When she heard Yi Xian's words, her gaze froze. Just as Yi Xian said, why should she back down? The 10,000 Spirit Palace was the leader of the 10th Yuan Hui. The other party was just a manifestation realm cultivator. So what if she killed him? Little brother is right. My 10,000 Spirit Palace has swept through the entire Grand Central Territory. How can we back down today? Violet Spirit's face turned cold. Killing intent flashed across her eyes as she looked at Venerable Water Yuan. What are you trying to do? Venerable Water Yuan was shocked. He could clearly feel Violet Spirit's killing intent. This also made his expression change and a great sense of fear rose in his heart. He had no chance of survival if he was targeted by a manifestation realm cultivator. If the other party wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as stepping on an ant. Kill him. Yi Xian was definitely an expert in bewitching people, especially a little girl like Violet Spirit who hadn't experienced much of the world. Go to hell for this lady. Violet Spirit stretched out her jade-like hand. The world around them was collapsing. Venerable Water Yuan screamed in horror, but his entire body was instantly smashed into pieces by Violet Spirit's palm. He turned into a mist of blood and scattered in the air. He did not even have the strength to resist. Hiss! Such a scene made even Yi Xian gasp. He finally saw how terrifying Violet Spirit was. He also saw the terrifying power of the Yin-Yang realm. One strike, just one strike from a manifestation realm cultivator, and a second manifestation realm cultivator could not even resist. In an instant, not even a trace of his body was left. Yi Xian's heart trembled. This was not a tremble of fear, but a tremble of excitement. He knew that sooner or later, he would catch up to Violet Spirit. He would also have such a terrifying cultivation. Chapter 1184. What a pity, what a pity. Seeing Venerable Water Yuan turn into a bloody mist, Yi Xian felt his heart ache. This was a great supplement, but he couldn't use the Tribulation Transcender technique to devour it. Little brother, here you go. Violet Spirit returned with a Primal Chaos Water Spirit bead in her hand. She tossed it over to Yi Xian. The Hall Master is dead. The disciples of the Undying Hall cried out in horror and fled in all directions. Even the 8 great elders didn't dare to stay. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots, kill them all. Yi Xian's eyes were malicious. He took a step forward and was about to kill all of the disciples of the Undying Branch Hall. He even wanted to charge into the Undying Branch Hall and plunder all of their treasures. Unfortunately, before Yi Xian could make a move, Violet Spirit instantly stopped him. She frowned and said, "Little brother, it's fine if you kill Venerable Water Yuan, but if you destroy the Undying Branch Hall, you absolutely cannot do such a thing. Obviously, killing Venerable Water Yuan was something Violet Spirit could handle, but destroying the orthodoxies of the Undying Hall was definitely not a small matter. It would definitely lead to a disaster. Yi Xian frowned. He wanted to continue to persuade Violet Spirit, but when he saw her frown, he knew he couldn't be too hasty. Big sister is right, I was too impulsive. Yi Xian chuckled. Let's go. Since they had obtained the Chaos Water Spirit Bead, there was no need for the two to stay here. Under Violet Spirit's command, the two turned into streaks of light and disappeared. All Spirits Hall. Violet Spirit's face was calm. She shook her head and sighed from time to time. Although she had killed Venerable Water Yuan on impulse, she still regretted it after calming down. Little brother, this kind of thing can't be done in the future. What we did is equivalent to killing people and stealing treasures. Although I can calm this matter down, it will damage our reputation if it spreads to the main hall, Violet Spirit said softly. Little brother is ashamed to have implicated big sister. Yi Xian sighed hypocritically. Looking at Yi Xian's ashamed expression, Violet Spirit felt that her words might have been too harsh. Forget it. It's just a small matter. However, I need to settle this matter first. During this period of time, you can focus on recuperating from your injuries. When I return, we'll return to the Grand Central Region together, instructed Violet Spirit. This little brother obeys. Yi Xian bowed respectfully, his entire person appearing extremely humble. Violet Spirit nodded and gave Yi Xian a few more instructions. Then, she turned into a stream of light and left the All Spirits Palace. Obviously, she was going to settle the matter with Reverend Shui Yuan. Seeing that Ziling had disappeared into the distance, the smile on Yi Xian's face gradually disappeared. The corners of his mouth curled up in a playful smile, and no one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian, you've bewitched this girl into trusting you completely. It seems that she'll be of great help to you when you go to the Grand Central Region, Gai Tianyuan said in a timely manner. She's the maid of the All Spirits Palace Lord. Wherever she goes, she'll be the center of attention. There are many things that she can do for me, and I'll have plenty of time to strengthen myself, Yi Xian said with a cold smile. However, it's also thanks to this little girl that I was able to collect the Chaos Elemental Beads. Finally, I can cultivate an avatar before I go to the Grand Central Region, Yi Xian said with a smile. Yi Xian, I must remind you that avatars have a slim chance of surviving. Who knows how many peerless geniuses have fallen while cultivating this technique. I hope you'll think twice before you act, advised Gai Tianyuan. If Yi Xian died, Gai Tianyuan would die as well. This was why Gai Tianyuan did not want Yi Xian to cultivate this technique. Unfortunately, Yi Xian turned a deaf ear to Gai Tianyuan's advice. Yi Xian believed that he could cultivate an avatar, and this was extremely important to him. Rumble. The palace doors of the 10,000 Spirit Palace rumbled as they closed. Yi Xian officially entered closed-door cultivation. Before entering closed-door cultivation, he warned everyone in the 10,000 Spirit Palace that no one was allowed to disturb his closed-door cultivation without his permission. Inside the All Spirits Palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air as the primal 5 elements stone floated in front of him. There was also a large amount of heavenly and earthly treasures piled up like a mountain, causing the entire myriad Spirit Palace to be illuminated in a myriad of colors. If you want to cultivate an avatar, you'll need to use the most powerful flames to melt the Chaos Elemental Beads and these heavenly treasures to forge an avatar, Gai Tianyuan's voice rang out in Yi Xian's ears. Of course, I know. Yi Xian squinted his eyes. The aura around him suddenly surged. The 5-colored flame burned around him. It was the Chaos 5-colored mystic flame that he had refined years ago. Yi Xian did not know what kind of flame could be considered powerful. However, the 5-colored mystic flame produced by the variant Chaos Saint Tribulation was definitely not a problem to forge an avatar. Refine. Yi Xian formed a seal with both hands. The five-colored mystic flame whizzed out and swallowed the chaos elemental beads and a large number of heavenly treasures in an instant. Sizzle. Under the intense heat of the five-colored mystic flame, these heavenly treasures instantly melted into a ball of crystal-clear liquid. However, the 5 spiritual stones did not change. They were still shining brightly under the five-colored mystic flame. However, Yi Xian was not in a hurry. He knew that the chaos elemental beads were extremely sturdy. According to the introduction of the Avatar's secret technique, it would take 100 years to melt the chaos elemental beads. Time passed little by little. In just 30 years, the chaos elemental beads had melted into 5 balls of liquid. It was 70 years earlier than expected. However, Yi Xian was not surprised. After all, the 5-colored mystic flame was extremely powerful. It would definitely be fiercer than other flames. Yi Xian was not surprised that the 5-colored mystic flame could melt the 5 spiritual stones 70 years earlier. Condense. When all the materials had melted into liquid, Yi Xian began to forge a body according to the Avatar's secret technique. The process took a long time. It took a total of 500 years for Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian had to be extra careful when forging the Avatar. This was because this was his second life. Moreover, he needed this Avatar to cultivate the boundless secular technique and the astral origin formula. Naturally, he had to forge this Avatar to perfection. Phew. When 500 years had elapsed, Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His tense nerves finally relaxed a little. A body had appeared before him. Sparkling and translucent, multicolored light shone resplendently. A body that was identical to Yi Xian's bloomed with light. This was simply another Yi Xian. Good. Yi Xian's eyebrows twitched. He looked at this Avatar body with joy. The excitement on his face was extremely strong. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with this Avatar body that he had forged. Kid, forging an Avatar body is very simple. However, what comes next is very dangerous. Are you sure you want to continue? Gai Tianyuan asked in a gloomy voice. The Avatar body was a great divine ability. It was also a very widespread divine ability. Many great sects had this divine ability. However, the number of people who could cultivate it could be counted on one's fingers. Forging an Avatar body was very simple. However, if one wanted to cultivate an Avatar body, the nurturing process would be terrifying. Chapter 1185. It was mentioned in the previous article. In order to cultivate an external incarnation, one had to fuse one's heart blood into the external incarnation. More importantly, one had to split a trace of one's soul and fuse it with the external incarnation. This process required 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, the main body and the external incarnation would be connected, and the external incarnation would be cultivated. This process sounded simple, but it was extremely terrifying. One must know that the soul was the foundation of a human. Even if it was just a trace, it could cause one's mind to go crazy. If one's willpower wasn't strong enough, one's soul would definitely explode and die. Therefore, this was also the reason why the external incarnation was so widespread, but very few people were able to cultivate it. After all, no one would joke around with their life. Yi Xian naturally knew the dangers of cultivating an external incarnation. However, he believed that he could succeed. Although he didn't have a shocking aptitude, Yi Xian wouldn't lose to anyone in terms of willpower. Inhale, 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 inhale. Yi Xian constantly adjusted his body. He had to adjust his condition to the peak because what he was about to face was an extremely difficult task. 10 years later. Yi Xian's essence, energy, and spirit were already extremely condensed. A ruthless light flashed across his eyes. Qi. Yi Xian moved. He slit his wrist and frantically urged the heart blood in his body. The bright blood instantly fused with the external incarnation. Buzz! The external incarnation shone brightly. A wave of spiritual aura suddenly appeared, and a trace of vitality gradually grew. Ah! Suddenly, Yi Xian let out a low roar. Blue veins rolled on his forehead. His body trembled violently. A trace of weak white light gradually overflowed from his glabella. Yi Xian forcefully split a trace of his soul. The pain from the soul was simply unbearable. Moreover, Yi Xian's mind was in a mess. He only felt that his brain was about to explode. Condense! Yi Xian let out a loud roar. He trembled as he urged the technique. He slowly sent the trace of his soul into the external incarnation. His entire body was groaning in pain. At this moment, Yi Xian's mind was in a trance. He couldn't tell who he was. He was Yi Xian. Was he an avatar? Yi Xian had to maintain his main body and his avatar at the same time. The two minds clashed against each other, and the pain made Yi Xian feel like he was better off dead. Ah! Yi Xian hammered the ground with his fists. His avatar did the same. Clearly, the pain Yi Xian was enduring was unimaginable. Yi Xian didn't care about the physical pain, but the pain of his soul being torn apart made him feel as if he was in a life-or-death situation. Yi Xian was extremely certain that if he could not endure the pain of his soul being split apart, his soul would definitely shatter and die, and he would fall from this world forever. Ah! Yi Xian was rolling on the ground in pain. His avatar was in the same state. Because his soul had split, he was controlling two bodies at the moment. He couldn't maintain this state at all. "You idiot!" Gai Tianyuan roared. Gai Tianyuan roared again and again. His remnant soul was imprisoned within Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. He could completely feel that Yi Xian's sea of consciousness was cracking inch by inch, and the aura of the nirvana force that coiled around him was unstable, as if it was about to explode at any moment. At this moment, Gai Tianyuan was almost scared to death. If Yi Xian's soul were to explode and die, the nirvanic force around him would completely erupt. Gai Tianyuan would also be reduced to ashes. No, he can't hold on. He will definitely die. Gai Tianyuan roared angrily, but there was nothing he could do at this moment. It was too late for Yi Xian to give up now. He had to succeed. Otherwise, he would die. At this moment, Gai Tianyuan could only secretly pray that Yi Xian could endure this terrible pain. Otherwise, he would be buried with Yi Xian. "Refine!" Yi Xian roared. He struggled to support himself on the ground with his arms and sat down cross-legged again. His avatar also climbed up from the ground and made a series of hand seals. Fortunately, Yi Xian had experienced too many life and death situations. Even though he was suffering from the pain of his soul splitting, he still managed to endure it. He even used his strong willpower to urge his avatar to cultivate. What a terrifying willpower! Gai Tianyuan muttered in shock. He originally thought that Yi Xian wouldn't be able to endure it. But he didn't expect Yi Xian to actually make it through. In fact, the first step of cultivating an avatar was the most difficult. Most people died during this first step. But if someone could endure the pain of the soul splitting during this first step, then they only needed to rely on their strong willpower to have a 50% chance of successfully cultivating an avatar. Why 50%? The reason was very simple. Although one had endured the pain of the soul splitting, it was an extremely difficult process for the body and the avatar to be connected in mind for the next 10,000 years. Most people died because of the soul splitting, and some people cultivated an avatar. But this group of people completely lost themselves and didn't know who they were. According to the mortals, this person was crazy. Only a small group of people survived the 10,000 years and really succeeded in cultivating this great divine sense. Anyone who had cultivated outer body incarnation was not a simple person. They were all top figures in the entire chaotic world. Infinite methods, connected in mind. Yi Xian let out a low roar as he quickly formed hand seals. His avatar sat opposite him and also formed hand seals. However, his avatar's eyes didn't open, but the auras of Yi Xian and his avatar were gradually fusing into one. When the avatar opened its eyes, it also meant that Yi Xian had succeeded in cultivating. Time passed by little by little. 100 years, 1,000 years, 3,000 years, 5,000 years. When 5,000 years had passed, the aura of the avatar was extremely agile. Its eyelids were trembling slightly, as if they were about to open at any time. Amazing, really amazing. I, Gai Tianyuan, am not as good as him. 5,000 years had passed, and Gai Tianyuan had seen every detail of Yi Xian. His hatred for Yi Xian in his heart had decreased a lot. Instead, he had an indescribable feeling of admiration. To be honest, there were very few people who could make Gai Tianyuan admire. But now he really admired Yi Xian. He admired him so much that he had nothing to say. Even Gai Tianyuan himself didn't dare to say that he could cultivate an external incarnation because he was well aware of the dangers involved. However, Yi Xian was actually about to succeed in cultivating it. It had only taken him 5,000 years. Good boy, good boy. If you were not an ordinary person, I am sure that you would definitely be the most powerful competitor in the next Yuanying. Gai Tianyuan sighed again and again. What a pity, what a pity. The heavens are jealous of geniuses, the heavens are jealous of geniuses. You have such unparalleled willpower, but the heavens are so unfair that you only have a mortal body. Gai Tianyuan was filled with regret. He was truly praising Yi Xian, but a trace of pity flashed through his eyes. If Yi Xian had a battle physique, even if it was an ordinary battle physique, just by relying on his astonishing willpower, his future would be limitless. Unfortunately, an ordinary person was an ordinary person after all. The maximum limit was the creation and transformation realms. This was the unchanging iron law of the chaotic world. It had never been heard that an ordinary person could enter the yin-yang realm, let alone the more powerful realms after the yin-yang realm. While Gai Tianyuan was lamenting, a thunderous roar came from Yi Xian and his avatar. Condense. Yi Xian suddenly roared, and his eyes suddenly opened. At the same time, his avatar also slowly opened his eyes. A light flashed across his eyes, and a human-like smile appeared on his face. Success. Yi Xian and his avatar spoke at the same time. His avatar slowly stood up, constantly looking around, and looked at Yi Xian's body. Chapter 1186. Me? Which one is me? At this moment, Yi Xian was in an extremely strange state. He was an avatar, but he saw the main body looking at him in confusion. This strange contradiction left him extremely confused. Ah! See your nature with a clear heart, and all things are natural. Suddenly, just as Yi Xian was in this strange state, Gai Tianyuan shouted. This shout was like a thunderclap, exploding in Yi Xian's ears. It was also Gai Tianyuan's shout that instantly woke Yi Xian up. Hiss! Yi Xian and his clone sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. They felt an extreme sense of lingering fear in their hearts. Fortunately, Gai Tianyuan had shouted just now. Otherwise, they would have fallen into a muddle-headed state and might have become a madman. Many thanks. Although Yi Xian had always wanted to kill Gai Tianyuan's shout could be considered a great help. He sincerely expressed his gratitude. However, Yi Xian's thoughts were completely focused on his avatar. Main body. Avatar. Yi Xian and his avatar spoke at the same time. When their eyes met, they felt as if their minds were connected, as if their blood was connected. Ha ha ha. In the next moment, Yi Xian and his avatar laughed loudly. Yi Xian was still Yi Xian, and his avatar was still Yi Xian. It was just that he had successfully cultivated an avatar. Whether it was his avatar or his main body, they were both Yi Xian himself. However, it had to be said. Avatar was indeed a powerful ability. Although both his main body and avatar were Yi Xian could control two minds at the same time. The profundity of this was not something that could be described with words. Yi Xian, congratulations on your success. Gai Tianyuan sighed. Thank you for your final shout to remind me. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have really woken up, Yi Xian said sincerely. I'm just the icing on the cake. Even without me, you'd still wake up with your willpower, Gai Tianyuan said honestly. However, even though you've successfully cultivated the external incarnation, you still need to regulate your breathing and recover your spirit. That silly girl Violet's spirit has been waiting for you outside for a long time. If she hadn't sensed that you were at a critical juncture in your closed-door cultivation, I'm afraid that girl would have barged in here. Gai Tianyuan reminded. Upon hearing this, Yi Xian nodded slowly. Then, he sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. After all, cultivating the external incarnation for 5,000 years had exhausted him. Strangely enough, while Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged in cultivation, his external incarnation was pacing back and forth in the hall, seemingly pondering something. Don't get me wrong. His external incarnation was also Yi Xian. However, after he cultivated this technique, he could multitask. Although his main body was cultivating, his incarnation was also thinking. This was the terrifying aspect of the external incarnation great divine ability. One person could be used as two people. This kind of mysterious technique was indeed very powerful. 10 days later, Yi Xian finally walked out of the 10,000 Spirit Palace. However, he had already put away his external incarnation. Violet's spirit was waiting outside the palace. When she saw Yi Xian come out of his closed-door cultivation, a smile appeared on her face. Little brother, your closed-door cultivation this time made me wait bitterly. It actually took more than 5,000 years, Violet's spirit complained. However, what's up with your cultivation? Why is it still at the Supreme Saint King realm? Have you not recovered from your injuries? In the next moment, Violet's spirit frowned. This was because she could tell that Yi Xian was still at the Supreme Saint King realm. Clearly, in the 5,000 years of closed-door cultivation, Yi Xian had not recovered to the 9 Heaven Saint King realm. However, Yi Xian had already said that his injuries had already recovered, but he still needed some time to recover his former cultivation. Little brother, I've already stayed in the Great Southern Dou region for thousands of years, but I still haven't found the inheritance of the Chaos Star Master. Let's return to the Great Central region together, Violet's spirit said. We're going to the Great Central region now. Yi Xian was slightly startled. Violet's spirit was puzzled. Don't tell me you still have something to do. Little brother, I've already dealt with the matter of Venerable Shui Yuan. However, this matter was still caused by you. If you continue to stay in the Great Southern Dou region, I'm afraid that you'll have a conflict with the Undying Palace. Violet's spirit frowned. I still have some unfinished business. Why don't you return to the Great Central region first? I'll definitely return in 1,000 years at most, or 100 years at least, Yi Xian said softly. This. All right. Violet's spirit did not ask why Yi Xian did not leave with her. After all, everyone had their own secrets. She did not want to force him. What happened next was very simple. Violet's spirit left behind many precious pills and returned to the Great Central region. Yi Xian also heaved a sigh of relief when Violet's spirit left. After all, Yi Xian was indeed very irritated to have to call a little girl sister every day. No matter how thick-skinned he was, he still had a knot in his heart. Now that Violet's spirit had returned to the Great Central region, he could finally be free. Of course, Yi Xian's best choice was to travel with Violet's spirit. However, he still had some unfinished business, so he had to delay it for another 1,000 years. First of all, although Yi Xian had successfully cultivated the external incarnation, he needed it to start cultivating the astral origin art and the boundless secular technique. Second, Yi Xian had yet to establish his own sage monarch world. This was related to his cultivation. Third, he needed to become a 9 heavens sage king within 1,000 years. Only by completing these 3 matters could he truly go to the great central region and compete with those so-called spiritual children and divine children. Perhaps he could also meet some old friends in the great central region. Yi Xian already knew that Liu Bai was in the heaven-mending sect. However, the whereabouts of Yuan Ling and Luo Ho were unknown. These 2 people were inextricably linked to him. Moreover, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were his subordinates who had been following him. To be honest, Yi Xian was not too worried about Luo Ho and Yuan Ling. Although they were only small saints, they knew the chaotic world very well. However, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were different. The 2 of them were too unfamiliar with the chaotic world. Moreover, their cultivation was the weakest. Yi Xian was also worried that something would happen to the 2 of them. However, now was not the time to think about these things. Yi Xian knew that the most important thing for him was to strengthen himself. Only when he was truly powerful would he have the opportunity to meet these old friends again. Swoosh! Yi Xian took a step forward and soared into the sky, instantly disappearing from the great palace hall. From now on, he might never return, because this place no longer had any value to him. His future should be in the great central region, not the Nanda border. Miofa Kingdom. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. Lin Miofa and Lin Miofa bowed at the side. However, the 2 girls looked nervous and did not dare to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian did not look like Yao Yueya. He had returned to his original appearance. The arrival of Yi Xian simply shocked the 2 girls. One should know that the great palace hall had already spread the news that Yi Xian was dead. However, he actually appeared in front of them alive. How could they not be shocked? I need a place for seclusion, a place that no one knows about. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Chapter 1187. Okay. Lin Miaofa's expression was complicated, but she agreed without hesitation. She didn't ask why Yi Xian was still alive, because she knew what to ask and what not to ask. If she knew too much, she would probably become a dead person. You are very smart, and I like smart people very much. As long as the 2 of you listen to my orders, I can guarantee that the wondrous spell nation will prosper forever. But if the 2 of you leak information about me, not only will your souls scatter, but your wondrous spell nation will also vanish, Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian had already planted restrictions on the 2 women. With a thought, their souls would scatter and they would die. That was why he came here. The wondrous spell nation has a huge core. This place was originally used by the founder. Now it seems that it can be used as a place for seclusion, and no one will be able to find your tracks, Lin Miofa said. Okay. Yi Xian nodded slowly. Fire spewed out from the core of the earth. As far as the eye could see, there was a sea of magma. The scorching aura was like a tide, turning the space into a fiery world. The 2 Yi Xian were sitting cross-legged on a bluestone, staring at each other. Doppelganger. Main body. The 2 Yi Xian spoke at the same time, and then smiled at each other. This scene was extremely strange, but it also seemed to be reasonable. Astral origin art, boundless secular art. The main body took out 2 supreme ancient books and placed them in the doppelganger's hand. Don't worry, main body. I will definitely master these 2 arts, the doppelganger said in a deep voice. Swish. Swish. With a flip of his hand, a mountain of heavenly materials and earthly treasures appeared, almost filling up the entire core of the earth. The spiritual energy overflowing from these heavenly materials and earthly treasures directly formed a spiritual energy vortex, which was simply terrifying beyond imagination. These natural treasures were all resources that Yi Xian had plundered madly over the years. The number had reached an unimaginable level. These natural treasures are enough for you to cultivate for 10 million years, the main body said with a smile. You and I are of the same heart and body. Once I master my cultivation technique, you and I will dominate the primal chaos. The clone said in a deep voice. This kind of experience couldn't be shared with others. This was also the terrifying part of cultivating an avatar. His avatar was Yi Xian, and his main body was also Yi Xian. However, the profoundness of these two thoughts was not something an outsider could understand. The 5-colored profound flame and 9-colored divine lightning can help you overcome the chaos holy tribulation. Once you master the first stage of the astral origin mantra, you can completely conceal the aura of your tribulation. The true body spoke in a deep voice as he sent the 5-colored profound flame and 9-colored divine lightning into his clone's body. His doppelganger was just a small saint, so he would definitely have to face the great saint tribulation. According to Yi Xian's guess, his doppelganger would also have to face the Chaos Saint tribulation. Leaving behind the 5-colored mystic flame and the 9-colored thunderclap, it would be easy for him to face the tribulation. Of course, even without these two things, his doppelganger could still face the tribulation successfully. This was because he was his doppelganger, and his doppelganger was him. He had faced the tribulation before, and now he was only facing it again. However, just in case, Yi Xian still left behind the 5-colored profound flame and the 9-colored thunderclap. From this, it could be seen that Yi Xian was very cautious about this cultivation. Rumble. In the depths of the magma sea, his doppelganger finally began to cultivate the astral origin mantra and the boundless secular world technique. He had officially entered a state of cultivation. It's time to leave. Yi Xian took a step forward and quietly left the Earth's core. Only his doppelganger was cultivating crazily in the magma sea. However, whether it was Yi Xian's main body or his doppelganger, they were both himself. He could also sense the doppelganger's situation at all times. It had to be said that the outer body doppelganger was indeed extremely terrifying. After mastering this mantra, Yi Xian's doppelganger was completely immersed in cultivation. Its speed was incomparable to the previous Yi Xian. After all, the previous Yi Xian had cultivated bit by bit, while his doppelganger had his own consciousness. His understanding of cultivation was incomparable to the past. Although he cultivated the boundless secular world technique and the astral origin mantra at the same time, his doppelganger's cultivation speed was absolutely terrifying. Yi Xian could also concentrate on cultivating the space-time force and the nirvana force. The two could be said to complement each other, greatly increasing his terrifying potential. Yi Xian was very confident that when his doppelganger successfully cultivated the boundless secular world technique and the astral origin mantra, when his main body and doppelganger became one, he would become an unimaginably terrifying existence. Of course, Yi Xian couldn't bring his outer body doppelganger with him, because his original purpose was to let his outer body doppelganger cultivate these two mantras. If he brought his doppelganger with him, it wouldn't benefit Yi Xian at all. After leaving the geocentric flame sea, Yi Xian directly returned to the mystic spell kingdom. Next, he would step into the 9 heavens Saint King realm and establish his own Saint Monarch world. Saint Realm. From the little saint to the 9 heavens Saint King realm, all belonged to the Saint Realm. Only by stepping into the Saint King realm could one establish a Saint Monarch world, and the Saint Monarch world was the strongest offensive method in the Saint Realm. But what would Yi Xian's Saint Monarch world be like? Mystic Spell Kingdom's forbidden area. Yi Xian sat cross-legged. An obscure and terrifying fluctuation spread around his body. The surrounding heaven and earth became extremely distorted, and wisps of chaotic airflow spiraled around him. There are strong and weak Saint Monarch worlds. The strong can change heaven and earth and destroy an area. The weak can shatter mountains and split seas and become mediocre. Everyone's potential is different, and the sage monarch worlds they open up are also different. Some worlds are filled with yellow sand, some worlds are filled with endless waves, and there are even world-shocking figures who can open up the outline of a primal chaos universe. Gai Tianyuan indifferently explained the secrets of the sage monarch worlds to Yi Xian. Yi Xian listened attentively. He was indeed inferior to Gai Tianyuan on the path of cultivation. Gai Tianyuan had once been an immortal realm existence, so Gai Tianyuan's guidance would bring unimaginable benefits to him. Senior, may I ask what kind of world you cultivate in? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. The Tianyuan world. It's a world of its own. It can sweep away all enemies and be invincible. Gai Tianyuan's voice was calm, but if one listened carefully, they would discover that his voice contained a hint of arrogance. Yi Xian had never seen the Tianyuan world before, but from Gai Tianyuan's tone, Yi Xian could tell that the Saint Monarch world Gai Tianyuan had created was extremely terrifying. The Saint Monarch world is the foundation of the Great Tao. Only by using it as a foundation can one achieve the Great Tao. The Saint Monarch world is called the Saint Monarch world. The Good Fortune world is called the Good Fortune world. As for the Yin Yang world, it's called the Good Fortune world. As for the Yin Yang world, it's called the Good Fortune world. Of course, those are just general terms. In the end, it's all about perfecting the world you establish. Remember, if your Saint Monarch world is destroyed, it's the same as destroying the foundation of your Great Tao. You'll have no fate with the Great Tao of primal chaos. You'll also lose the chance to become one of the most powerful existences in history, Gai Tianyuan explained. After a long moment of silence, Yi Xian finally asked, what kind of world did the God Lord of all spirits establish? Chapter 1188. Silence. 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 When Yi Xian asked this question, Gai Tianyuan fell completely silent. He didn't answer Yi Xian for a long time. Yi Xian could sense that something was wrong with Gai Tianyuan. Even his soul was trembling slightly, revealing a hint of self-mockery. The world he created is the primal chaos universe. Gai Tianyuan's voice was filled with self-mockery and helplessness. There was also a hint of bitterness in his voice. Clearly, he was not calm at all. It was as if he was reminded of many things that he didn't want to look back on. Gai Tianyuan had suffered very few defeats in his life, but the one that left the deepest impression on him was his defeat at the hands of the Lord of all spirits. There was no suspense in his defeat, and it was a very direct defeat. Facing the terrifying Yi Lingtian, he truly understood what it meant to be powerless. The primal chaos universe? Yi Xian was stunned. Clearly, he was shocked by Gai Tianyuan's words. He didn't notice Gai Tianyuan's dejected and dispirited aura. Yi Lingtian, also known as the Lord of all spirits, no one knows of his past, and no one knows of his background. His appearance broke the peace of the 10th Yin gathering. It can be said that along the way, countless great enemies fell under his feet, all of them becoming piles of bones beneath his feet. That was how he became the most powerful expert of the 10th Yin gathering. And the world he created is the primal chaos universe. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why he can become the strongest of all time. The primal chaos universe. This is already the peak of all worlds that have been created. What other world can compare to the primal chaos universe? Gai Tianyuan said a lot, clearly self-mocking. Yes, how could Gai Tianyuan compete with someone who had created a primal chaos universe? It wasn't just Gai Tianyuan. Didn't all the heroes of ancient times fall at the feet of the Lord of all spirits? Yi Xian fell silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Gai Tianyuan's words had a great impact on him. How could he compare to such a terrifying Lord of all spirits? Looking at Yi Xian's silence, Gai Tianyuan said in a low voice, "Kid, I know you're a very proud person, and your goal is to become the strongest throughout the ages. But you're just a mortal, Gai Tianyuan said. Your potential is limited, and the Sage Monarch world has nothing to do with cultivation base. It has everything to do with potential. Do you really think you're strong enough to create a primal chaos universe? He wasn't intentionally attacking Yi Xian. I understand. Yi Xian calmly said. However, in the next moment, his hands formed a seal as he began to open up his Sage Monarch world. Yi Xian was a person who didn't believe in fate. He never believed in the will of the heavens. He only believed that man could conquer the heavens. Only he knew how many hardships he had experienced along the way. Rumble. Primal chaos light rippled in all directions. Yi Xian constantly circulated his cultivation, and the saint soul in his sea of consciousness trembled violently. The surrounding world slowly dimmed, and it was obvious that he was gradually opening his Saint Monarch world. AI. Gai Tianyuan sighed helplessly. Putting aside the fact that he and Yi Xian were enemies, he really did admire Yi Xian's temperament. Unfortunately, everyone's destiny was already set in stone, and there was no way to change it. Open. It was as if chaos and thunder were exploding, as if everything in the world was collapsing. An explosive sound came from Yi Xian's mouth. A powerful and terrifying aura spread out, instantly causing a huge change in the world he was in. Rumble. Heaven and earth darkened, and a foul stench filled the air. Strange images of seas of blood appeared, accompanied by the wailing of ghosts and the wailing of gods. A terrifying world of corpses and seas of blood appeared. Azura Sea of Blood? Gai Tianyuan murmured. Although he was imprisoned in Yi Xian's spiritual sea, he was still able to see what was happening in the outside world. When he saw Yi Xian's sea of blood, he was shocked awake. AI, just as I thought. Looks like you've committed quite a few massacres. Gai Tianyuan sighed deeply. He was not moved by Yi Xian's world at all, as if he had already expected it. The Azura Sea of Blood was very powerful, but it was still slightly inferior to the worlds created by some terrifying battle constitutions, let alone the chaotic universe created by the Lord of all spirits. Those who could create the Azura Sea of Blood were all known as unparalleled demons, which was more than enough to show how extraordinary Yi Xian was. Unfortunately, the Azura Sea of Blood was very powerful, but its potential was limited. It was no more than an ant in the eyes of some Tongtian great beings. Yi Xian, congratulations on opening up the Azura Blood Sea. To be able to reach this step with the body of a mortal, you can be said to be a world-shaking genius. Gai Tianyuan said sincerely. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not answer Gai Tianyuan. Instead, he looked around the Azura Sea of Blood solemnly, his eyes filled with reluctance. Am I only capable of creating the Azura Sea of Blood? Said Yi Xian hatefully. He was unwilling to accept that he could only create the Azura Sea of Blood. His goal was to become the strongest of all time, not some unparalleled demon. This is your destiny, boy. You can't fight against it. Gai Tianyuan sighed. What is destiny? Yi Xian sneered. Only I can decide my own destiny. I refuse to believe that I'll be reduced to mediocrity. Break! Yi Xian roared ferociously as his entire body went berserk. He actually erupted with all of his cultivation and even used the power of his saint soul. He actually wanted to personally destroy the Azura Blood Sea that he had created. You're crazy. Gai Tianyuan roared as he watched the Azura Sea of Blood crumble. He couldn't believe that Yi Xian was so crazy. Was he suicidal? After all, the Sage Monarch world was the foundation of the Great Tao. Everything started from there. Yi Xian was destroying his own foundation. If he did this, his cultivation would drop greatly, and if he did, his soul would scatter. Yi Xian was simply courting death. Stop! Stop! Gai Tianyuan roared in fear. If Yi Xian's soul were to scatter, then he'd be buried with him. Explode! Bang! Yi Xian roared ferociously as the Azura Blood Sea world exploded. Splat! When the Azura Sea of blood exploded, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood essence. His entire body withered, and he exuded a lethargic aura. Crazy! Are you crazy? Gai Tianyuan roared. He couldn't understand why Yi Xian was doing this. Huff! 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 Yi Xian gasped for breath. His body was drenched in sweat, and his life force was fading away. However, his eyes shone with unprecedented determination. The world I created isn't just the Azura Sea of blood, Yi Xian roared. I've suffered for so many years to reach this point. It's not just the Azura Sea of blood. I'm sure the world I create will be even bigger. Chapter 1189. Draw out my saint soul, sacrifice my bloodline, the boundless chaos, open up the world. Yi Xian roared crazily. He wanted to open up the world again, but this time, his entire body became extremely illusory, as if he was about to transform into the Tao between heaven and earth. Yi Xian didn't believe that his potential was only enough to open up the Azura Bloody Sea world. At this moment, he sacrificed his entire body to force out all his potential. This was a crazy act, and also a desperate act. You're crazy, you little lunatic. Looking at Yi Xian's crazy actions, Gai Tianyuan's fear was unimaginable, because he felt that his soul was about to scatter and die, and the power of nirvanic extermination that imprisoned him seemed to be about to explode at this moment. Rumble. Suddenly, the collapsed Azura world rotated, and the monstrous sea of blood churned violently, gradually turning the entire Azura world into a whirlpool. What's going on? Gai Tianyuan said in a daze. He originally thought that Yi Xian was going to transform into the Tao, but such a strange change actually happened in the Azura world, and Yi Xian didn't die immediately. Open! Bang! Like the first thunderclap in the primal chaos, like the first ray of light born in the primal chaos, the whirlpool exploded, and the scene that appeared next simply stunned Gai Tianyuan on the spot. The beginning of the first yuan, the birth of the primal chaos. Bang, bang, bang. Like ancient stars rotating, like the universe shaking, a total of 12 whirlpools were born, instantly covering this part of the world. The 12 chaotic whirlpools were like 12 ancient stars revolving around Yi Xian, and the chaotic airflow that filled the air made Yi Xian look extremely mysterious, and an indescribable mysterious fluctuation was growing on Yi Xian's body. It was as if the ancient heavens were high and mighty, as if the primal chaos was silent. At this moment, Yi Xian looked so unreachable that it gave people a feeling of worship. This is the star world. Gai Tianyuan observed the 12 chaotic whirlpools, and a trembling voice came from his mouth, but in the next moment, he denied his own judgment. This was because he had seen the stellar world before, and the stellar world did not look like this. But if what Yi Xian created was not the astral world, then what were the 12 mysterious energy spheres that surrounded him? Gai Tianyuan dared to say that he was very knowledgeable, and there was no sage king's world in the chaotic world that he did not know. However, he was very sure that he had never seen the world created by Yi Xian, nor had he ever heard of a world with 12 mysterious airflows. This is... Gai Tianyuan was no longer in the mood to think about how Yi Xian had managed to establish another sage monarch world. He focused all of his attention on the 12 mysterious vortexes, carefully observing them. How is that possible? How is this possible? After a full 10 breaths of time, a loud roar came from Gai Tianyuan's mouth. A strand of his remnant soul was trembling in fear. If he wasn't trapped in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, he would have been paralyzed with fear. What did Gai Tianyuan see? The chaotic 12 elements? It's actually the chaos 12 elements. How is that possible? Gai Tianyuan roared with a trembling voice. He couldn't believe what he had seen. 12 vortexes of chaos swirled in the air, each of them representing a different chaos verse. Every single one of them was filled with completely different auras. It was common knowledge that there were 12 elements in the chaotic universe, and this was the 10th one. The 12 chaotic vortexes around Yi Xian were actually the outlines of 12 chaotic universes. In other words, each chaotic vortex represented a chaotic universe. How could Gai Tianyuan not be shocked when he saw such a shocking thing? Impossible. How is this possible? The Lord of all spirits has only established one chaotic universe. How could he have established 12 chaotic universes? He's just a mortal. Gai Tianyuan's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe such a ridiculous thing. Rumble. While Gai Tianyuan was in an indescribable state of shock, the 12 chaotic vortexes around Yi Xian spun wildly, and Yi Xian's cultivation rose at a terrifying rate. Break. Yi Xian abruptly opened his eyes. The 12 vortexes of primal chaos dissipated with a loud bang, and the world suddenly regained its clarity. However, at this moment, Yi Xian's cultivation suddenly broke through to the 9 heavens Saint King realm. At the same time, in the distant depths of the chaotic universe, an ancient palace stood majestically, and a chaos figure was sighing to the heavens. The chaos was born in the beginning of the first prime. The legendary figure has finally appeared. It seems that the chaotic universe is about to change greatly. Though I am the Lord of Chaos, how should I face this person? He let out a long sigh, then quietly turned around and left the palace, which then vanished into the depths of the chaos verse. What was destiny? This was a profound topic that no one could answer. However, there was one person who claimed to be in charge of destiny. He was the Lord of Destiny, a truly terrifying existence in the chaotic universe. Destiny is unchangeable and irreversible. This is the great way of destiny and also the truth of the chaos. Although you are not in my control, I cannot tolerate the appearance of an alien like you. A ray of 9-colored divine light walked in the chaotic universe, and an indifferent voice came from his mouth, quietly echoing in the starry universe. Time and space changed, and all things fell into oblivion. The stooped figure was looking up at the long river of time. His appearance was unreal, but it gave people a sense of loneliness and desolation. Time is like water, and what should come will eventually come. In the tide of time, maybe you and I can meet. All things fall into oblivion, chaos is annihilated, the cycle repeats, and the chaos changes. A dark figure stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the chaotic world from the edge of the chaotic universe. Although he did not erupt with a terrifying aura, the surrounding starry sky had been turned into a vacuum by the power of annihilation. It seems that the mystery of chaos samsara will appear in the 10th prime. I should prepare early. The figure of annihilation whispered coldly. Karma engenders each other, and there are many implications. Will the battle of the strongest really start in the 10th prime? Under a divine tree of karma, a woman sat cross-legged. Her body was filled with the power of karma, and she was murmuring softly. But it is only the 10th prime, and there are still 2 strongest who have not appeared. What happened? The woman sighed. Even though she was in strongest, she could not deduce the root cause. At the same time, the remaining 5 strongest places exclaimed. In the depths of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, the Lord of all spirits frowned, and no one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 1190. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of turbid air. He'd just opened up the primal chaos 12 Yuanhui world, causing him to feel extremely tired, as if his entire body had been hollowed out. You. Gai Tianyuan stammered several times in a row, his entire body in a state of extreme panic. Even now, he still couldn't believe what he'd just seen. What's wrong with you? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He could clearly sense Gai Tianyuan's trembling presence. Although he knew that it might have something to do with the world he'd created, he didn't know much about the 12 chaotic vortexes, nor did he know what kind of world he'd created. The Chaos 12 Periods. You've created the Chaos 12 Periods. Gai Tianyuan blurted out in panic. He wanted nothing more than to throw Yi Xian's body aside and see just what kind of existence Yi Xian was. The Chaos 12 Periods. Yi Xian was startled, and he exclaimed in surprise. That's right, the Chaos 12 Periods. It also represents the Chaos 12 Periods. Do you know what kind of terrifying opportunities lie within? Gai Tianyuan roared in a trembling voice. Back then, the Lord of all spirits had created a chaos universe, but in the future, he'd become one of the strongest of all time. Yet you've created the Chaos 12 Periods. This is simply a fantasy, Gai Tianyuan explained in a trembling voice. Yi Xian's eyes lit up when he heard Gai Tianyuan's words. A surge of excitement welled up in his heart, but he didn't show it. So you're saying that my potential is greater than the Lord of all spirits? Yi Xian asked the question on his mind, his heart filled with excitement. Of course. Gai Tianyuan was resolute and decisive. However, he hesitated for a moment before continuing, but there's something that puzzles me. Your potential is simply unprecedented. If there's anyone who can match your potential, it would only be the legendary Chaos Spirit body. But you only have a mortal body, not a Chaos Spirit body. So how did you create such a terrifying world? Gai Tianyuan's mind was filled with doubts. He couldn't figure out what was going on. One had to know that everyone opened up a different world. The stronger the world opened up, the greater the potential of that person. However, there was an unwritten rule in the chaotic world. A mortal body could only cultivate up to the third stage of the creation realm. It was impossible for them to step into the yin-yang realm. This was an unchanging rule. However, Yi Xian had created the 12 Chaos Yuanhui worlds with his mortal body. This was extremely contradictory to his mortal body. What a pity, what a pity. Even though you've created the 12 Chaos Periods, you just have to have a mortal body. Even if you have endless potential, you'll have to stop at the third level of creation. Gai Tianyuan sighed. At this moment, Yi Xian frowned and asked in a low voice, why do you keep saying that a mortal body can only cultivate to the third stage of the creation realm? What is the secret behind this? Yi Xian had always wanted to know the answer to this question, but no one had told him. Today, taking advantage of this opportunity, Yi Xian naturally wanted to know the answer. After all, this was related to his future path. The so-called mortal body is just a general statement. In fact, the root of it is the soul. Your soul is ordinary and can't resonate with the law of chaos. This kind of person is called a mortal body. The reason why the body is powerful is not because of the physique, but the soul. Because the soul of the body is innately powerful and contains endless mysteries. It can achieve a great resonance with the law of chaos. Whether in cultivation or in battle, it can erupt with terrible power. If you want to step into the yin-yang realm, you must be one with the law of chaos. But your soul can't resonate with the law of chaos, which is the so-called mortal body. Naturally, you can't step into the yin-yang realm. The maximum limit is the 3 stages of creation. This is the unwritten rule of the chaotic world. I've never heard of a mortal body that can break this shackle. Maybe you don't understand what I'm saying, but you should be able to see from my body that I have the Tianyuan battle body. Now, only a remnant of my soul is left. My physical body has long been destroyed by the Lord of all spirits. But as long as my soul is still there, as long as I can find a suitable physical body, I can still transform into the Tianyuan battle body. This is because my soul can resonate with the law of chaos. This is the strength of the body. Gai Tianyuan spoke tirelessly. He spoke a lot, and even explained the difference between a battle body and a mortal body to Yi Xian. Of course, even if the Pangu clan specializes in the physical body, their souls are extremely powerful. Because the soul is the core of every cultivator, there is a saying that the soul is scattered and the body is destroyed. Gai Tianyuan said. I see. Yi Xian nodded slowly. At this moment, he also thought of a person, and this person was Lu Bai. Back in the mortal world, Lu Bai was just a mortal. The mortal world was in the Dharma ending age, and there was no spiritual qi left in the world. However, Lu Bai had created a path of cultivation that allowed people to cultivate even if there was no spiritual qi. Moreover, Lu Bai had once used his mortal body to create the inverse immortal formation that even immortals feared. This was because his soul was different. Otherwise, how could Lu Bai's talent be so terrifying? A person's soul was innate, and no external force could change it. This was the difference between the body and the mortal body. Only now did Yi Xian fully understand. That's why I'm very curious. Your potential is so terrifying, but you're just a mortal. This is an extremely contradictory thing that I can't imagine. Gai Tianyuan murmured doubtfully. Is it possible that I have some kind of hidden body? Yi Xian was naturally unwilling to accept that he was just a mortal. This was why he probed. After all, Gai Tianyuan was an experienced and knowledgeable old man. Perhaps he could see something. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Gai Tianyuan slowly shook his head and sighed. I've suspected this before. I even guessed that you might be the legendary hidden spirit body, but in the end, you're just a mortal. I can't be wrong. What's the hidden spirit body? Yi Xian's eyes moved. The hidden spirit body is a legendary body. Although it's not as good as the chaotic spirit body, it's comparable to the 12 strongest body constitutions, or even better. The most terrifying thing about the hidden spirit body is that although it looks like a mortal body, it can coincidentally turn into one of the 12 strongest body constitutions at a certain time. It can also merge 2 strongest body constitutions into one. Gai Tianyuan revealed some secrets of the body to Yi Xian. 2 strongest bodies in one. Yi Xian was stunned. He felt that the hidden spirit body was very similar to his situation at the moment. Chapter 1191. One had to know that Yi Xian had cultivated 2 supreme powers and was fortunate enough to be a hidden spirit body. Yi Xian had great expectations in his heart. Who has a hidden spirit body in the chaotic world? Yi Xian asked. Gai Tianyuan seemed to have guessed Yi Xian's true thoughts. He sighed slightly and said, Don't think too much. Although you have cultivated 2 supreme powers, you are definitely not a hidden spirit body. This is because although a hidden spirit body looks like a mortal body, its soul is surrounded by spiritual qi. I have always been in your sea of consciousness while your soul is ordinary. You are not a hidden spirit body at all. Gai Tianyuan paused for a moment before continuing. However, legend has it that a hidden spirit body was born in the last Yuan Hui. Legend has it that this terrifying hidden spirit body turned into the heaven-devouring devil body and wanted to recreate the path of the heaven-devouring devil master in the 7th Yuan Hui. Unfortunately, it was still killed by the 9th Yuan Hui's strongest. In the end, it became a pile of bones beneath the feet of the 9th Yuan Hui's strongest. The 9th Yuan Hui's strongest. The 7th Yuan Hui's heaven-devouring devil master. Yi Xian said in a daze. He didn't know much about the 10 strongest and had only heard of the nicknames of a few of them. At this moment, he was naturally extremely curious about these 10 strongest. I will tell you about these 10 strongest so that you can be more prepared when you go to the central domain. Also, don't become enemies with the orthodoxies established by these 10 strongest. Gai Tianyuan said in a deep voice. Chaotic Universe, 12 Yuan Hui. 1st Yuan Hui, Master of Chaos. 2nd Yuan Hui, Master of Destiny. 3rd Yuan Hui, Master of Time and Space. 4th Yuan Hui, Master of Undying Heaven. 5th Yuan Hui, Master of Human Tao. 6th Yuan Hui, Master of Destruction. 7th Yuan Hui, Heaven-Devouring Devil Master. 8th Yuan Hui, Master of Extreme Love. 9th Yuan Hui, Master of Extreme Devil Master. 10th Yuan Hui, Master of All Spirits. Suppressing the Ages, the most powerful in the primal chaos. These were the most powerful in the 10 great yuans. They dominated the world, suppressing the primal chaos. They were supreme characters, revered by all creatures in the primal chaos. Of course, there were people who had doubts about who would be stronger if these 10 strongest existences were to fight. Unfortunately, no one knew the answer because no one had ever seen a battle between the strongest of the ages. Naturally, no one knew who was stronger. However, there was a common consensus among all creatures in the primordial chaos, and that was that the earlier the strongest of all time appeared, the stronger they would be. Let's use a simple analogy. When the Chaos Verse was born, the Lord of Primal Chaos of the first epoch was born. He was the first autarch of all time, and he was in control of the power of primordial chaos. He was definitely known as the #1 figure in all of the Chaos Verse history. The 10 greatest powers were also ranked because of this. The power of chaos, the power of destiny, the power of spacetime, and so on. Of course, this was only the knowledge of the chaotic creatures. No one dared to say which of the 10 strongest of the eons was stronger. After all, the level of the strongest of the eons wasn't something anyone could imagine. Right now, it was the 10th Yuan Hui. The Lord of all spirits, Yi Ling Tian, had already achieved the Great Tao and became the most powerful expert of the 10th Yuan Hui. The Lord of all spirits also ruled the 10th Yuan Hui. However, there were still 2 more eternal paragons that hadn't appeared yet. They would have to wait until the 11th and 12th Yuans. This also formed the chaotic universe's 12 Yuan Hui, which was also the saying of the chaotic universe's 12 Yuan Hui. As Gai Tianyuan slowly explained, Yi Xian's eyes gradually lit up. He finally had some understanding of the 10 greatest existences. Not only were there the 10 greatest existences, but there were also 9 Chaos Star Masters. However, these 9 Chaos Star Masters weren't very famous and were rarely known by the chaotic creatures. Of course, the inheritance of the Chaos Star Master of the 10th Yuan Hui had already been obtained by Yi Xian. At this moment, his clone was cultivating it. Kid, although it's the 10th Yuan Hui ruled by the Lord of all spirits now, you've obtained the inheritance of the Chaos Star Master. As long as you act carefully, you can also become a Chaos Star Master in the end. Chaos Star Masters don't have any requirements for a mortal body. This can be considered your greatest opportunity, Gai Tianyuan said. Chaos Star Master. Yi Xian slowly shook his head. Indeed, Chaos Star Masters were very powerful and could almost stand shoulder to shoulder with the Eternal Paragons. However, that was only almost. This meant that Chaos Star Masters weren't as strong as the Eternal Paragons. Yi Xian was a proud person. He wouldn't allow himself to be inferior to others. He wanted to become a Chaos Star Master, but he also wanted to become an Eternal Paragon. This was his true intention. If I don't become an Eternal Paragon, I won't be satisfied even if I die, Yi Xian said coldly. You're too ambitious, but you should know that although you've created the 12 primal chaos periods, your mortal body is still a mortal body. You can't even step into the yin-yang realm, so how are you going to compete for the next period's title? Gai Tianyuan scolded. Ever since he became more familiar with Yi Xian, Gai Tianyuan admired Yi Xian more and more. However, the cruel reality was that Yi Xian didn't have the qualifications to compete for the next Yuan Hui's position. So what if I have a mortal body? There's nothing absolute in this world. I'll definitely find a way to break into the yin-yang realm. Yi Xian was resolute and decisive. His eyes were filled with determination because he was never someone who would admit defeat. Furthermore, you're wrong. I've never thought of competing for the 11th Yuan Hui's position. That's because it's too long. So long that I can't wait. I want the 10th Yuan Hui's position. That's my true goal, Yi Xian said arrogantly. What? You want the 10th Yuan Hui's position? Have you cultivated until you've gone stupid? Hearing Yi Xian's ridiculous words, Gai Tianyuan cried out in shock. He simply couldn't believe his ears and loudly berated Yi Xian. He was simply shocked by Yi Xian's crazy thoughts. Can't I? Yi Xian said gloomily. Have you gone mad? Gai Tianyuan roared, the Lord of all spirits has already achieved the Grand Tao and became the 10th Yuanhui's strongest. How can you become the 10th Yuanhui's strongest? You're really ignorant. No wonder you're Yi Lingtian's stepping stone. Yi Xian sneered and said, who said that Yi Lingtian will become the strongest of all time, and I, Yi Xian, won't be able to become the strongest of all time in the 10th Yuan gathering? Who said that? This is the law of chaos. No one can break it because the Grand Tao of chaos only allows for one Yuanhui's strongest. Gai Tianyuan angrily refuted. Then if I kill the Lord of all spirits, Yi Lingtian, then wouldn't the seat of the strongest of all times be empty, and I can become the new strongest of all times? Yi Xian muttered sinisterly. You. Gai Tianyuan was completely stunned by Yi Xian's bold words. He was completely shocked by Yi Xian's words. Ignorant, stupid, incorrigible. After a full 10 breaths of time, Gai Tianyuan loudly berated. It could be said that he was greatly disappointed in Yi Xian. Incorrigible? Yi Xian sneered, how do you know if you haven't done it? If I can kill Yi Lingtian, I can replace him. You. Gai Tianyuan was already shocked by Yi Xian's crazy thoughts. At this moment, he was completely speechless. However, his heart was in turmoil. Although he didn't approve of Yi Xian's thoughts, it gave him an indescribable feeling. That's right, if the Lord of all spirits died, then the seat of the strongest in the 10th origin gathering would be empty. This wasn't a fantasy, it was indeed a possibility. However, it was only a possibility. After all, this had never happened from the 1st to the 10th Yuanhui. Everyone knew that the strongest was invincible in the primal chaos. If someone could really kill the strongest of all, then his so-called strongest seat would be nothing more than a title. However, such a person couldn't possibly exist. You really are a lunatic. However, your crazy idea is just wishful thinking. I advise you to focus on cultivating the primal chaos Star Master's inheritance. This is your only way out. Gai Tianyuan gradually calmed down and advised Yi Xian. Wishful thinking. Yi Xian had a playful look on his face. He didn't refute Gai Tianyuan again because Yi Xian couldn't be bothered to argue with him. As for whether it was wishful thinking or not, he would let Gai Tianyuan know in the future that arguing with him now was meaningless. However, Yi Xian also knew that it was too early to consider these things. He first had to strengthen his cultivation step by step. Only then could he carry out his crazy and bold plan. Chapter 1192. Gai Tianyuan couldn't understand Yi Xian's stubbornness. Yi Xian wasn't a boastful person, but Yi Xian's creation of the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world had truly shocked Gai Tianyuan. Can you show me the world you created? Gai Tianyuan asked in a deep voice. Rumble. 12 chaotic vortexes appeared once again and began to revolve around Yi Xian. The power of the primordial heavens erupted and caused the world around him to collapse. It really is the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world. Even though it's just been created, its aura is already frightening. If your cultivation deepens and completes the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world, I'm afraid you'll be able to kill many powerful enemies with this aura alone. Gai Tianyuan gave a very high evaluation and was extremely envious of Yi Xian. If he had created the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world back then, the Lord of all spirits would have been trampled under his feet. How would he have ended up like this? Unfortunately, Gai Tianyuan knew that it was just wishful thinking because he didn't have Yi Xian's potential. He also felt sorry for Yi Xian. The heavens were so unfair that Yi Xian was only a mortal. Kid, I have to remind you of one thing. Unless you're in a life or death situation, you must never reveal the world you created. If others know that you created the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world, you'll definitely be killed, Gai Tianyuan said solemnly. Of course I know. Yi Xian nodded slowly. Even if Gai Tianyuan didn't remind him, he knew that the world he created was a great taboo. If others knew about it, he wouldn't have a good ending. Now that everything is done and I've stepped into the realm of a nine-heaven Saint King, it's time for me to head to the Central Territory, Yi Xian murmured. Go. Perhaps you'll find a way to break the curse of the mortal body there. As long as you can break the curse of the mortal body not being able to step into the yin-yang realm and the chaotic 12 Yuanhui world, you'll definitely become the strongest in the next Yuanhui, Gai Tianyuan said firmly. In the 5 regions of chaos, the center was the most important. This was a world where a myriad of Daos competed for supremacy. This was an extremely dazzling and prosperous world. In the boundless river of time, countless extraordinary figures had left behind a deep stroke in the Central Territory. Great sects fought for supremacy, geniuses soared through the skies, almighty experts turned the heavens and the earth upside down, and undying experts turned the galaxies upside down. There were countless opportunities here, as well as supreme primal chaos techniques. Be it chaos treasures or rare treasures of heaven and earth, the Grand Central Domain was a paradise for cultivators. However, this heaven was very cruel. Only the strong could survive here, and only the strong could obtain what they wanted. Weng. Universe reversal, starry sky teleportation. A heavenly gate opened in the void, and an ancient war chariot rumbled out. 4 peerless beauties accompanied the chariot on both sides, and a coachman was driving the ancient war chariot forward. The bamboo curtains and jade-green jade were ticking loudly. In the ancient war chariot, there was a person sitting cross-legged. This person was Yi Xian, who had come to the Grand Central Domain. However, his current appearance was that of Yao Yuyi. As the 9th spirit son, Yi Xian would no longer exist in this world. This was Yi Xian's plan, and he was proceeding according to this plan. As the 9th spirit son, the most direct symbol of Yao Yuyi was the 4 peerless beauties beside him, as well as the coachman driving him. Since he wanted to become the 9th spirit son, Yi Xian naturally couldn't lack these things. The 4 peerless beauties and the coachman had been staying in the Myriad Spirit Palace in the Grand Southern Do region. When Yi Xian set off for the Grand Central Domain, he naturally had to bring them along. After all, he was now the 9th spirit son. If he returned alone, it would be somewhat inexcusable. Spirit son, Star Do City is just ahead. There is a teleportation formation that can lead directly to the Myriad Spirit Palace. The coachman urged the ancient war chariot forward while asking for instructions from Yi Xian. Okay. Yi Xian nodded slightly. The ancient war chariot rolled forward, heading towards the majestic heavenly city in front of them. The chaotic universe was boundless. The Grand Southern Do region was very far away from the Grand Central Domain. With the ancient war chariot's speed, it might not be able to reach the Grand Central Domain even if it traveled for tens of thousands of years. Of course, this was only because Yi Xian's cultivation was not enough. If it was an immortal realm expert, the starry sky teleportation would only take an instant. However, although Yi Xian's cultivation was not at the level of starry sky teleportation, the 5 domains of chaos had interdomain teleportation formations. Yi Xian also relied on this formation to reach the Grand Central Domain. Star Do City. This was an ordinary city in the Grand Central Domain. The 4 walls were tens of thousands of feet high. A river that was tens of thousands of feet wide surged outside the city. Some strange beasts could be seen flitting across the sky from time to time. Although Star Do City was just an ordinary city and was insignificant in the entire Grand Central Domain, there was a teleportation formation in the city. It was also a place where cultivators came and went. After arriving at the Grand Central Domain, Yi Xian, as the 9th spirit son, naturally had to return to the 10,000 spirit sky palace. In order to go there, he had to use the teleportation formation. Otherwise, it would take thousands of years just to travel. After all, the Grand Central Domain was vast and boundless. It was not something the other 5 domains could compare to. It was like the east, south, west, and north domains were just lakes, while the grand central domain was a vast ocean. It was also the true core of the chaotic world. In front of Star-Do City's gate, there was an endless stream of cultivators coming and going. Some of them flew in the sky, some came on clouds, and some came on strange beasts. However, no matter who it was, they would all descend from the sky and walk into Star-Do City. There was an unwritten rule in the Grand Central Domain. Anyone who entered the city had to be inspected by the city guards before entering. After all, if there were bloodthirsty demons sneaking into the city, there would definitely be a bloody massacre. The people guarding every city were all disciples of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. This also proved that the 10th Yuan Hui was controlled by the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Rumble. Fierce beasts roared and war chariots rumbled. When Yi Xian's ancient war chariot arrived in the sky, the gate of Star-Do City was in chaos. A large number of cultivators stepped aside and looked at Yi Xian's ancient war chariot with reverence. Greetings, Ninth Spirit Son. As soon as Yi Xian's war chariot landed, 4 city guards bowed. Everyone's face was filled with fear and trepidation. No need for formalities, Yi Xian said indifferently. Although he had never been to the Grand Central Domain, he had interrogated Yao Yueya about the Grand Central Domain before. He naturally knew about these formalities. The 12 spirit sons of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace were extremely noble. Even Creation Realm cultivators had to be in fear and trepidation because it was very likely that one of them would become the strongest in the next Yuan Hui. Even if the 12 spirit sons couldn't become the strongest in the history, they would definitely be important figures in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace in the future. These disciples guarding the city gate naturally didn't dare to be negligent. Spirit Son, please enter the city. The 4 guards moved aside and acted extremely humble. The coachman drove the ancient war chariot into Star-Do City. Chapter 1193. Yi Xian's arrival immediately alarmed the Star City Lord. In just the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, the Star City Lord led a large number of people to welcome Yi Xian. After all, the Star City Lord did not dare to be negligent with the arrival of the spiritual son. In front of the City Lord's mansion, 4 maids opened the bamboo curtain for Yi Xian, and Yi Xian slowly walked out from the 10,000 spirit carriage with a refined smile on his face. His demeanor and aura were exactly the same as Yao Yueya's, and it was impossible to tell if he was real or fake. The Star City Lord, Zhang Xiling, greets the 9th spiritual son. The Star City Lord was a great saint king, and when he saw Yi Xian, he was extremely fearful and respectful. He led the people behind him and bowed to Yi Xian, not daring to look directly at Yi Xian. Everyone, please dispense with the formalities. Yi Xian lightly smiled. It was a good interpretation of what it meant to be refined and refined. It gave off a gentle aura like the spring wind and rain. Yao Yueya had always been a refined and courteous person in front of others, and he seemed to be very kind. Even in front of Immortal, he wouldn't put on a high and mighty attitude. This was his usual style of doing things. Ha, I was wondering who had arrived at Star City. So it's you, elder brother. Suddenly, a loud laugh came from the city lord's mansion. A young man in golden robes walked out slowly, and 2 sword boys followed behind him. The man had blonde hair and blue eyes. His hair looked like it was made of gold as it cascaded down his back. His eyes were like sapphires, but when they opened and closed, they gave off a sharp aura. He was actually a 9 Heavens Saint King. The 2 sword boys following behind him held 2 wooden boxes in their hands. Although the wooden boxes were not opened, a faintly discernible sword intent seeped out from the wooden boxes. Obviously, the 2 wooden boxes contained extremely impressive weapons. They should be the golden-haired young man's weapons. Elder brother, what's with that look? You were only sent to the Great Southern Domain. Don't you recognize me now? The golden-haired young man sneered. The 10th spiritual son, Tuoba Tian. Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian did not recognize this person, but he had done his homework before coming to the great central domain. He even knew some people from Yao Yue's mouth. This golden-haired young man was the 10th spiritual son, Tuoba Tian. His cultivation method was called Heavenly Sword 9 Songs, and he was ranked after Yao Yue's of Heavenly Sword. However, even though Tuoba Tian was calling Yao Yue elder brother, the two of them had a huge grudge against each other. That was why he was ranked Yao was, of course. He was to twos of heaven. Of course was of course, and he of the. And of courses of heavens. Looks like you've become a fool after your trip to the Great Southern Do domain. Not only did your cultivation not improve, but you're also not as bright as before. I thought you died in the Great Southern Do domain. Tuoba Tian sneered. The Star City Lord and the others kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to interrupt. After all, this was a competition between spiritual sons. Yi Xian had a warm smile on his face from beginning to end. He was not angered by Tuoba Tian's provocation, because that was Yao Yue's style. Yao Yue would pretend to be magnanimous even when faced with others' ridicule. He would not get into a conflict with others. Among the 12 spiritual sons, Yao Yue was famous for being a good person. However, those who knew Yao Yue knew that he was a very shrewd person. His methods were sinister and despicable, and he did not have any friends among the 12 spiritual sons. Tuoba Tian naturally knew of Yao Yue's sinister face. He was not afraid that Yao Yue would fall out with him. Logically speaking, since Yi Xian had become the 9th spiritual son, he should act like Yao Yue and ignore Tuoba Tian's ridicule. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was not Yao Yue, and he was not prepared to act like Yao Yue. The reason was simple. Yi Xian had become the 9th spiritual son to avoid some trouble for himself, so that he would have enough time and cultivation resources to become stronger. However, this did not mean that he would be like Yao Yue and endure, because that was not his style. Domineering, unreasonable, vicious, and merciless. If you look at me one more time, I'll kill your entire family. This was Yi Xian's style of doing things, and this style had to be displayed bit by bit. Right now, Tuoba Tian was the beginning of his style. Don't worry, even if your mother dies, I won't die. When you have time, go and collect your mother's corpse. The smile on Yi Xian's face disappeared, and his words were extremely vicious. Silence, silence, a deathly silence. When Yi Xian's words entered his ears, Tuoba Tian was stunned. He could not believe what he had just heard. If the person standing in front of him was not Yao Yue, he would have thought that someone had turned into Yao Yue and insulted him. You. What did you say? Tuoba Tian's face was ashen, and veins bulged on his forehead. An extremely terrifying evil aura burst out, and a terrifying killing intent flashed across his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian. You didn't hear me clearly. Yi Xian said with a sinister smile, I remember that your mother was the city lord of Peerless City. Back then, in order to let you enter the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace, she seduced Elder Yuan Tian, which allowed you to become a disciple of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. However, Elder Yuan Tian was indeed ruthless. He used your mother as a cultivation vessel and almost took half of her life. However, it was worth it. After all, you did not disappoint and became the 10th spiritual son. With your current status, I believe that Elder Yuan Tian will let your mother live, right? Wah! When Yi Xian finished speaking, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His face had already turned purple, and he looked extremely ferocious. An extremely terrifying killing intent burst out, and his eyes were as red as blood as he looked at Yi Xian. Tuoba Tian's heart was about to explode from anger. He was in a state of extreme humiliation because what Yi Xian had said was the greatest humiliation of his life. This secret was known to everyone, but ever since Tuoba Tian became the 10th spiritual son, no one dared to speak of it. However, this was Tuoba Tian's greatest humiliation. Yet today, Yi Xian had bloody unraveled Tuoba Tian's scars. How could Tuoba Tian not feel ashamed and resentful? He wished for nothing more than to grind Yi Xian's bones to dust. Yao Yueya, you've gone too far. I'll take your life. Clang clang clang. At this moment, Tuoba Tian was extremely furious. The wooden boxes in the hands of the two sword boys exploded with clanging sounds. Following an explosion, two killing swords soared into the sky. Heavenly Sword 9 Songs, Qingfeng Song. Tuoba Tian roared angrily. His sword fingers were like swords that hung down from the heavens. Two killing swords slashed through the heavens and earth as they slashed towards Yi Xian with a sword light that could destroy the heavens and earth. Just you. Yi Xian laughed maniacally. A blood-red demonic moon rose behind him, and the world suddenly became blood-red. A blood moon sword condensed. As Yi Xian moved his sword fingers, it turned into an extremely beautiful sword radiance that slashed towards Tuoba Tian. Yi Xian was simply too terrifying. He himself was a 9-heaven saint king. Moreover, he had passed through the mutated primal chaos holy tribulation and opened up the primal chaos 12 Yuanhui world. His battle prowess was unstoppable. Clang! Tuoba Tian's two swords wailed and fell from the sky with a loud bang. Tuoba Tian's face was flushed red and traces of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, this attack had injured him. Kneel down. Yi Xian took a step forward. His 5 fingers were like a millstone of the heavens and earth. They possessed a supreme might that could annihilate mountains and rivers as he slapped Tuoba Tian to the ground. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.